OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
All right. A very good morning to you. It's Wednesday, the 10th of May. Had to think about that one. You're very welcome along. Shane is here.
Morning, how are things?
Nathan is here.
How are you?
We're going to talk about GAAGO. This is one of those very Irish stories that runs and gathers more momentum the more people try and shut it down. Everybody would have seen Declan McBennett on the 6-1 news last night with Katrina Perry. If you haven't seen it, go and dig it out. They've helpfully made the video available for you. Very interesting. Fair play to RTE for holding themselves to account. Hopefully the story doesn't disappear now, because I don't quite think it's over. We've Alan Dillon, the former Mayo footballer who's now Fine Gael TD, is going to join us in about 10 minutes time to give us his thoughts on it. In the meantime, there was some hot action last night. Bruce Springsteen was in the RDS.
Oh, he was there.
I missed the Champions League game. I had
Bruce trumps Champions League, as it turns out.
Yeah.
Was he good? 3 hours I heard. I was chatting to Kira Kelly there at the coffee. She was at it as well.
3 hours and 10 minutes.
Whoa.
Yeah, played an extra 10 minutes at the end.
Is it a bit long?
You don't feel it when you're there.
A couple of times I've gone to see Bruce and Moyles there's a bit about an hour and a half in, he still hasn't played the hits. I'm like, come on, let's just get to the encore and get to the good stuff.
Where did you see him? RDS?
Does he ever play any well? RDS and Nolan Park, I guess, are the only places he ever likes to rock up.
Yeah. Did he play Croker once? I think he played Croker once, and there was a sense that the sound wasn't as good as it might have been. Sound was excellent last night.
I could hear him up in the Dublin mountains.
It was still ringing in my ears this morning. But yeah, if you, I mean, the food is amazing there. Like, I didn't have any because we'd had dinner before we go. But the food at the RDS, I mean, like, I can see why the people go to matches there. I know we're not supposed to be talking about this. I'm getting dagger eyes from Colin here.
What the food options are compared to other stadiums.
Well, amazing.
Right.
Oh yeah, like, you know, Fish Shop have a van. There's like loads of high end. What are they?
Dublin 4 treats.
Well, I mean, other parts of the country like nice food too, Shane.
Of course.
You don't need to begrudge. I mean,
it just turns out that the Leinster supporters get the nicest food.
They do get the nicest food. I'm like,
they're a red wine shop.
Fair play to them. I couldn't see. Just on the drink though, right? On the drink, the only pre-mixed things are vodka and Coke and like pink gin, which I can't have gin, but I want vodka and Coke. Give me.
Clip that there.
Why?
Because it's a lot of Coke at like 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah, but if it was vodka, I wouldn't be mad keen. If it was Jack Daniels and Coke, I'd be happy enough. Now, you see, I like my red wine, and the time it comes back to me badly is when I'm at concerts, because...
You get the shits.
Where is this going? This lad hasn't been asleep.
You said it comes back to me badly.
No, because you end up having to go around with like a pint glass of red wine, otherwise you're at the bar. And
Big Sam.
It's
all comes back to Big Sam.
Just warm.
Right.
Like, wow.
All right, give us your reviews of Bruce in the comments. Give us your reviews. Oh, the sound, is it?
Is that Bruce, is it?
What time did you get home last night?
Well, it wasn't.
How many vodkas and Coke did you have, Ger?
That's good plural.
By the minute, it feels like it's starting to stack up.
Right. I'm reading the comments. Ger, did you see there was no footage of the Mayo ladies Connacht final win on RT, but they showed the Dublin ladies that wasn't even a final, says Cormac Keane. We will talk to the Mayo team a little bit later on. In the meantime, last night, 1-1. Is this, where in the previous year when away goals actually counted, this would have been a great thing for Manchester City to have come away, but they're still, for all the dominance last night in terms of possession, teetering on the brink.
Yeah, they're nearly there. It just shows like the 4-3 game in one of the legs last year was the first leg last year against Madrid. It was 4-3, chaos, and yet this year just looks more composed from City. They look more mature than they did last year. Game management last night was brilliant. Like, don't get me wrong, Real Madrid had chances, but City had chances as well. Courtois with some brilliant saves to keep them in it as well. 1-1 is delicately poised, because there's no reason why Madrid can't go to the Etihad and still get a result.
Oh yeah, I think both teams will probably be relatively satisfied. Definitely there were long periods where City weren't in their normal rhythm, and there's just this brilliant madness to how Real Madrid can grab back control of a game and then suddenly dominate. And it was a strange game in that the two goals were unbelievable. Vinicius again last night when he's trying that rainbow flick. Imagine trying a rainbow flick in a Champions League semi-final against Kyle Walker.
Where else you got?
It didn't really come off.
Confidence.
But like the balls to do that.
Yeah.
But City were probably having their best period just before Madrid got their goal, and Madrid were probably having their best period just before Kevin De Bruyne scores an equally brilliant goal.
That's football.
But it was, City went with the same team that started against Arsenal, so 4 at the back, obviously sticking Kyle Walker in there again, knowing that Vinicius is going to be a massive threat. I still think Madrid upset them quite a bit. They never let them get into any sort of real rhythm high up the pitch. Like the two midfields were fairly strong, and Haaland had a couple of half chances. I do wonder, and don't clip this up with me being in any way critical of Erling Haaland, I do wonder whether they'd be tempted to rest him against Everton at the weekend.
Just to make sure.
Well, you look at the game against Arsenal where he got the goal at the end, but he missed a heap of chances in that game. You look at him at the weekend against Leeds, missed a lot of chances again. Like, he's played an enormous amount of football that maybe ahead of the game at the Etihad.
Has he played an enormous amount of football compared to anybody who was at the World Cup, say? Do you know?
46
Possibly.
games,
but with all that
47
pressure
games.
on his shoulders to deliver in every game, I do just wonder if they feel, let's give him 1 week off and let's trust Julian Alvarez to come in and do a job. But watching the game last night, like, this is high-end stuff. Like, this is sport at its absolute peak. Like, the technical ability of pretty much every player under enormous pressure, like both sides
Is Camavinga
pushing up
going
in
to
you.
end up being a left back? Is that what they're going to do? Like in a Cancelo / now Trent kind of way?
Well, that's exactly what he did last night and just constantly stepped into midfield. But because it's Carlo Ancelotti, there can be no tactical genius behind it. It's just
Gives
Carlo
the ball
Ancelotti
away.
just sets them up and lets them at it. Isn't that what he does?
Give the ball to Rodri for the build-up to the goal as well from that position. So you'd be concerned.
See massive controversy about the ball being out of play or not. Was it not out of play like 10 minutes before the goal?
Well, the ball, I think play had gone back to Real Madrid at one stage after it went out of play.
Right.
And again, it was very Spanish TV type angles that showed it out of play.
They've used AI to prove that the ball was out of play, according to one of the Madrid's, maybe it was Marco, I'm not sure. Better goal? Whose was better? I think somebody somewhere has done a bit of analytics work at the top teams about taking shots from outside the penalty area, because they're doing it far more often. The shots are better. They are more often on target. And I think this is good for the game.
Element of surprise as well.
All that, don't shoot. It's like, well, sorry, but actually, if I shoot, I might potentially score a goal, which is the aim of the game.
I think De Bruyne's was better, wasn't it? Outside of the boot, the technique was ridiculous.
Yeah, I think Vinicius looked better, but De Bruyne's was probably the more difficult. I wonder if it's just the way teams tactically set up now, that you do have that band of three quite often behind an attacker who are in that position coming onto the ball. But De Bruyne, again, like De Bruyne's had a strange season in that he hasn't been anywhere near his best consistently. But if you look at all the most important games of the year, he's been the best player in pretty much all of them.
Yeah. I mean, this is definitely late period Kevin De Bruyne. You know,
he's 32 in the summer, I think. So
same age as Casemiro, of course, as Manchester United fans were like, you're not that old. You're the same age as Kevin De Bruyne. It's like, well, De Bruyne, good for 40% of your games next season and the year after. De Bruyne could have one of those Man City careers where he keeps playing, and they keep him around for events such as Champions League semi-finals and hopefully finals. I'm very interested to see how they do in a final.
Well, they have to get there. My overriding sense was that next week is going to be absolute chaos. That City, even at home, are just not going to be able to control the game enough against this Madrid side to dominate them. And Vinicius is he's heading, if he's not already, at Haaland levels for the way he can impact the game in the attacking area.
He's ridiculous.
He's just so good to watch.
Yeah.
So good to watch. Modric again last night in midfield, just controlling it. Like Toni Kroos had a bit of a shocker of a challenge at one stage, incredibly high. Some people might have felt it could have been a red card, but there's a physicality to that Madrid side, and this did feel like a clash of the two best teams in Europe. Has there ever been a more low-key Champions League semi-final than one tonight? Unless you're in Italy, of course, where I'm sure it's the biggest occasion of the year.
Yeah,
since the weekend.
Just a bit.
That's very local of you, Nathan.
It is. As usual.
It was just ridiculous. But Madrid have this aura in the Champions League, don't they, that just still hasn't gone away. Like we were chatting to Jasmine Baba yesterday about Jude Bellingham. Can you imagine Bellingham being thrust into this Real Madrid midfield as well next season? You cannot rule them out heading into next week. Like Carlo Ancelotti standing on those sidelines, you just look at him, you're like, that man knows what he's doing. And the way in which they set up yesterday, I loved how they dealt with Haaland as well. Rudiger had a lot of joy against him, and even that moment where Alaba makes an unbelievable block from Haaland, I think it was in the first half, and there's the fist pumps and the celebrations, and every little moment where they got one up on Haaland was celebrated like it was a goal. They were up for it, Real Madrid, but as it turns out City were as well. So if we get more of the same in the second leg, I'll be absolutely buzzing.
It's 7:40 this morning. Here's what's coming up between now and 10 o'clock for you. We have a star-studded show. Alan Dillon is standing by. We're going to get to him in just a moment. James Tracy is going to join us to preview the Leinster-Munster semi, and then, talk in the context of the Heineken Champions Cup final as well. Kieran Donaghy is going to talk basketball to us at 8:25. We have Vinny Perth at 8:50. Michael Moyles and Fiona McHale of the Mayo football team at 9:10. And Stephanie Zambra, who you might know better as Stephanie Roach, has been speaking to Kathleen, and that's coming your way at around about 9:30 this morning. So an unbelievably busy show for you. Andy Jennings has been in touch to say about Column's Monday movie recommendation, which was Big Night. Lovely little film, watched after the City Madrid game. Excellent Tuesday night all round. It was actually Cameron Hill's shout to Column. That was the recommendation. You were up late, Andy, and you're up early this morning. Fair play to you.
Yeah, not easy.
No. Right, let's move on. OTB AM is live with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition is available now. Alan Dillon is a former Mayo footballer who now, of course, is a Fine Gael TD, and joins us on the line now to talk to us about the situation with regards to GAAGO and in particular RTE. RTE were out yesterday defending themselves on the 6-1 news. But Alan, you've got a view on this that maybe, as a politician, you raising these questions, they're going to have to answer them. We raise the questions, and we've requested in with RTE and indeed with the GA to come on and talk to us this morning and hopefully this evening about this issue. But you guys might get answers where we might not be able to. So what questions do you want answered, Alan?
Well, good morning, Ger, and thanks for having me on. It certainly, I suppose the decision to place both football and hurling behind a paywall is causing considerable distress amongst GAA fans across the country. And firstly, it needs to be established, did the GAA explore other broadcasting options, or did they just decide to place football and hurling games behind a paywall following Sky's exit from the market? In recent days, there's been an alarming lack of transparency around RTE's 50% stake in GAAGO. I suppose contributing to that, did RTE simply agree to keep these games behind a paywall to increase revenue for GAAGO and themselves? And that's despite RTE receiving increased state funding. RTE now have more sports rights than it can broadcast, and yet licence payers are being asked to subsidise RTE further by paying for GAA sports content through GAAGO. We've seen that they are actually cherry picking key championship games for placement behind the paywall, and this seems less about fair selection. And I listened to the head of to the group head of sport within RTE yesterday around the selection being subjective, but certainly it's more about a bid to increase their subscribers, and for me it's counterintuitive for RTE, who is the public service body, to disregard a significant proportion of viewers. He talked yesterday about 250,000 viewers watching Munster Championship matches, in favour of focusing on an app-based streaming platform for these types of games. So yesterday, given that RTE is receiving increased revenues from this arrangement, it just seems unfair and unjust that the public should have to bear the burden of what they're already paying for within the licence fee.
Yeah, you've raised you've raised a lot of interesting points there, and the transparency one is the one that I'd just like to focus on at the moment. They're saying it's commercially sensitive to release the number of viewers, but how is it commercially sensitive when there's no other commercial entity in the country who has broadcast rights? So, RTE, if they were in competition with GAAGO, would be very interested to know what the figures for GAAGO were. But, oh, wait a second, the group head of RTE Sport is on the board of GAAGO, as is the Director General of RTE. Is that not a conflict of interest?
Well, in my eyes, it is. You have Dee Forbes and you have Declan McBennett, singing off both hymn sheets, looking at what the RTE schedule should be in terms of their mandate to provide 16 live games, which are predetermined set pieces, and we all understand the importance of these. But the decision and the fair selection around the other 15 games is now being called into question. Yes, it's a condensed season, and we understand the challenges that are faced by broadcasters. But the selection of the 38 GAAGO games needs to be scrutinised even further as a result. We talk about hurling and the Munster Championship being, the iconic games that we all want to see. So, for them to say that the most important games are usually defined largely by where you come from, I think, coming up to May 20th, when we have a double header where you have the last 4 teams who've contested All-Ireland finals, the decision making around placing these games on a Saturday, is strategic in nature, because like we've seen, after 17 championship weekends, there are just 5 Saturdays where RTE will broadcast live action, and that's a clear sign of what direction RTE are taking and the GAA in the interests of increasing subscription into this area.
So if we just need to be very clear on this, if there is an organisation and you're on the board of that organisation, while you're capable of representing some of the interests of your shareholder, your job is to make the company run as well as it possibly can. So their job is to make GAAGO be successful, and for GAAGO to be successful, it has to have the highest number of subscriptions. That seems to be counterintuitive to the position of a national broadcaster whose job it is to provide value for money for the licence fee.
That's correct. That is certainly correct. And as I said earlier, they're disregarding a significant proportion of viewers in favour of an app-based, internet streaming platform for these types of games. So
for profit. Sorry, we should say that this is a private company that is it's not a non-profit. Everybody can search up the company registration office and their constitution. It is a private company and behaves and thinks and acts like a private company, and their job is to make profit, and they're very, very good at that job. They made $1 million in profit in 2021. Those are publicly available figures. That's the most recent up-to-date figures that have been published. They made €1 million profit, and that's even before they had exclusive rights to the Munster Hurling Championship. And as you've said, I think the hurling community are really agitated at the moment. But wait till the football community in a couple of weeks' time goes to sit down in front of the telly, and on Saturday evening they're like, "Where's the game?"
Yeah, absolutely. And hurling, isn't played at the same degree in Mayo, but that's not to say that we really enjoy watching any of the, premier counties compete, in the All-Ireland series. And I think I would express the same regard for, people who aren't dominated by football, that, these really important clashes, like we have a very short season, so we want to see the best games live and have it accessible in every person's living room. But the decision making here around some key people who have, as you said earlier, have conflict on both sides, looking after RTE's interest, which is the national public broadcaster, but also trying to ensure that they're maximising profits on the other hand, by ensuring that some of these games are behind a paywall. So, it just, questions need to be asked in relation to this. Like yesterday I talked about, is it a case now that we should be reducing the licence fee in the upcoming budget in September, as a response to RT's increased revenue, from this type of paywall. And, that would certainly send a clear message about the importance of both maintaining affordable and equitable access to our national sports.
Well, I guess we don't know what the increased revenue is because it's commercially sensitive information to know what is coming in from GAAGO. Alan, on that greater point then about RTE, do you believe that they can have that balance of being a public service broadcaster while essentially competing with themselves as a 50% stakeholder in what's a commercial organisation?
Well, I think that their first priority is to be the national broadcaster, and I think for the licence payees, they expect a service to be delivered on free to air. And I think the commercial interests now are certainly muddying the water in this regard. But certainly, I think I have concerns around the radio silence from the GAA in relation to the transparency around the decision to explore other broadcasting options. And I think, what Virgin Media stated in their press release last night has, provided a lot more clarity in relation to their dealings with the GAA. Because we see in the Ulster Championship, we've had BBC who are providing a free-to-air service. So, if we're looking to promote our national games and we're serious about it, then we need to really, really look at what media rights are currently in place. And certainly the 38 GAAGO games that are being selected to maximise profits, as we said, but at the cost of the licence payer. And I think that's really at the heart of the conversation here today, and at the heart of every GAA fan across the country who wants to actually see these games. And if this is a 5-year deal, there will be outrage by the time we get to 2027, 2028, that a lot of these games people haven't had the opportunity to see. And again, in the current economic climate that we're in, with cost of living increases, bills, at extortionate rate, they're being asked to fork up €12 per game for a web-based platform, which isn't a replica of what we previously had around the Sky deal, which was a digital service that was on mainstream TV. So it isn't like for like in this instance.
Alan, do you have any concerns around the rights generally and the competition or lack thereof?
I do. I certainly feel if you look at our national game and the way the season now is condensed, I think, a lot of the discussion around putting games behind a paywall, and also both the financial and technological, inequalities that exist in this country are a reason of concern. And I believe it's crucial that we have an opportunity to revisit this issue, and that the delegates and the membership have an opportunity at the next GAA Congress to propose a review or a termination on the existing deal, and ask, is there an opportunity for other broadcasters to enter into the market and restructure it in a way that we have more games live and free to air, and that we're promoting our product in a more accessible way.
We were told by a spokesperson, an unnamed spokesperson in the papers during the week, that they need to sell these rights because otherwise they won't be able to keep the organisation going, and they won't be able to pay for a refurbishment of stadia, etc. But in the overall scheme of things, the GAA, their annual report in 2023 annual report, so 2022 revenue, had total revenue of 96 million. like the amount of money that we're talking about here and the rights for Sky and the amount of money, it's like it's a fraction of that, a tiny fraction of that. And we also know that there's loads of ways that the GAA can raise revenue. They're excellent at doing it, and they've been excellent at doing it. And they get a significant amount of funding already through Sport Ireland from the Exchequer, and now they're getting extra funding through the Exchequer by way of RTE and the licence fee. You do have to wonder at some point, do they actually need to generate all this money? Really, like at some point, and this is the tension that there is in the organisation, where there's a group of people whose job it is to maximise the revenue earning capability of the GAA, and they're in the offices in Croke Park, and that there is a tension with the volunteers around the country. Is it time for somebody within the GAA to kind of say, okay, enough, this is enough. We are a community-based organisation, and we're not going to absolutely maximise the amount of money that we could make from our GAA rights, but that doesn't matter because we're a community-based organisation.
Yeah, I'd have to agree, Ger. You know, the ethos of the GAA is they don't leave anyone behind. But in this instance, they're leaving a huge cohort of its support base left on the side. And, you know, that is really concerning. You know, media rights itself, as you stated, you know, total up, I think, 11.5 million over the last TV deal that was announced. So, you know, Sky were on the hook for, I think, over 2 million per annum. But it's only 1/5 of what the organisation actually, their annual turnover in the year, I think it's in the region of over 90 million. So it's a small proportion, but it is an enormous opportunity, though, in terms of the media rights and what we actually see in every person's living room, that we have the younger generation seeing their idols and have access to see them both on free to air or across other broadcasting platforms. But I'm not sure if, you know, thought was actually given to what the GAAGO platform was originally established for. That was to connect the Irish diaspora internationally, and now it's being shoehorned into a position where, you know, we don't have fantastic, you know, internet coverage across the country. You know, we've only 50% reliable or you know, steady streaming services across internet providers. And that again is bringing its own challenges, where, you know, people viewing these games on their tablets or on their laptops have intermittent signal, and, you know, I've heard accounts from frustrated, you know, customers who just can't get that reliable streaming service due to inadequate broadband. So we've moved a lot quicker here than one would have thought in this regard. And yes, you know, media revenue is important, but it's not the be all or end all. And we need to get real in relation to how we actually, you know, look after the community-based volunteers, so and ensure that we have, you know, an inclusive product that's available across, you know, every home. I remember 10 years ago, you know, when we were playing back in 2012, 2013, you know, August bank holiday weekend was always the weekend that everyone wanted to be still in the championship. And we had coverage on games on the Saturday, on the Sunday, and on the bank holiday Monday. And that was even before media rights were an issue.
What about the argument that with GAAGO, all the money is going back into the organisation, as opposed to Sky, which you're dead right, was a very
50% of it, obviously.
50% of it, but the rest is going back into RTE, and as Declan McBennett said, they spend that on more sports rights,
which they'll warehouse and not be able to show. They've got too, as Alan Dillon said, they've got too many. Anyway, go on.
But that argument that I didn't agree with at the time, and I think Sky, as you say, it's on your TV, it's in HD, there's no issues with streaming, that it's staying within the country, it is going back to grassroots, and you're right on, you know, maybe how much money does the GAA actually need over the course of the year, but it's better than it going to a private organisation.
I don't think I'd agree with that, Nathan, because you know, it certainly we haven't got the detail or the transparency to understand the strategic plan for GAAGO.
That's a very good point, Alan. And sorry to interrupt, because on the news last night, Declan McBennett made the point that they did pay for rights. So they're actually paying. The GAA are now, we're being told, paying themselves to buy rights. This is a very strange situation we've walked ourselves into, where the taxpayer is fronting up half of the money for that. Now,
but they also didn't have to compete with anybody for those rights, because the GAA didn't go back to the market after the deal with Sky fell through.
That's what we're told.
But I think we need to establish that. Did the GAA look for, or explore other broadcasting options before they actually entered into an agreement with RTE? And did RTE, as I said earlier, just agree to place football and hurling matches behind a paywall?
Yeah, and you used a very strong word, or you're quoted in the paper today as using the word cartel. Do you stand over that?
Well, I think until we get clarification in relation to the GAA and the RTE controlling the distribution of these games, there's no one else in the market here, Ger. So, there is heightening these concerns and calling into question both the principle of fairness and competition. So I think we need to explore, was there another broadcasting option that RTE reached out to? And the one that everyone would be talking about would be, Virgin or TG4. Would they actually asked, to see what they would actually bring to the table?
Or take the Sky deal. They could have taken the Sky deal.
Or the Sky deal, absolutely.
And Sky wanted to broadcast more games.
Yeah, that our information is the Sky wanted to broadcast more games. And
in all fairness, Sky did provide a very good service, and more or less Sky had taken over the Saturday broadcasts of live action, but we see now the direction that the GAA want to take, and that's to place all these Saturday games behind a paywall.
Alan, listen to Declan McBennett chatting to Katrina Perry yesterday. He essentially said that this 5-year broadcast deal, they are quite happy, or open at least, to going back at the end of each year and review. In your opinion, should that happen now at the end of this year? Clearly nothing's going to happen, as Declan said, during this championship campaign, but following this campaign, should that 5-year deal be assessed and reviewed again?
I think it needs to. I think, if you gauge the temperature and the anger amongst the GAA community, this fiasco now has been going on for the last 2 to 3 days. I think it's done reputational damage for both the GAA and RTE in terms of, it's the trust and the integrity around the current media rights package that's been available to both GAA fans across the country. And I don't expect this to go away anytime soon, especially with the bigger games, coming up over the next number of weeks. And we have more games than ever. RTE have more media sports rights than what they can broadcast. So, yeah, I just feel that.
Okay, I'm out of time, Alan, but I did want to ask you a final question. Is there a world in which you just see RTE being forced to divest their shareholding in GAAGO, and then there would actually be some competition between them, and it wouldn't look so cosy that there's one rights buyer in the market who owns 50% in conjunction with the seller of the rights? Because I don't feel like we're getting value for money as taxpayers when an organisation is sitting down at the same table with their business partners.
Well, that's what I said yesterday in my tweet, that it's a license fee increase to the back door. They're getting increased revenue as a result of this arrangement. And again, they're the national broadcaster. So I would agree that there needs to be a hard look in relation to the conflict of interest here from both, the group head of sport and the Director General in RTE in relation to how this arrangement was put in place, and if going forward that this arrangement can continue without any conflict of interest, as previously said.
Well, I'm sure the Competition Authority would be interesting, and maybe some of the other statutory bodies could have a look at it. And you guys, as I said earlier at the start, you have a much better chance of getting answers to these questions. And thanks very much for coming on this morning, Alan Dillon, TD. There, as I said, we have requests in to Declan McBennett and to the GAA to come on and talk to us on the show. It's a standing offer, and you can come on this evening. Yeah,
absolutely. It's not going to go away. I think, as Alan touched on, you have Mayo against Kerry, Galway against Tyrone, the last 4 All-Ireland finalists on Saturday week, all going to be on GAAGO. And it's not surprising this has come to a head now, because when TV rights deals are announced earlier in the year, it's a media story. We're interested.
Yeah.
Everyone sees Sky aren't there anymore. Hooray, it's all going to be on free-to-air TV again. Where actually, I think people looked at GAAGO as such a brilliant story for the GAA and what it's done for the diaspora and how it's enabled them to stay in touch with the games. And sort of, as I did, thought they're going to show every other game that wouldn't be on TV.
Yeah.
Like, let's be honest, not every game is the same, but not expecting that the biggest game of the weekends.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens over the next few weeks. It's a story, as you said, that's not going anywhere. 5 minutes past 8, OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition is available now. Up next, James Tracy previewing Leinster, Munster and the Heineken Champions Cup.
OTB AM.
The Sports Breakfast Show from Off the Ball.
Off the ball. Crazy numbers. It's like, people playing Football Manager, Championship Manager when they were younger. It's like cheat code stuff. You'd have these players who, they've been rigged to be excessively good, playing 20-something games and having more goals than appearances. But the Haaland stuff is sort of other scary stats.
We haven't even mentioned Robbie Keane. That's as left field a shot and shout as I remember. I did not have Robbie Keane in my Sam Allardyce bingo for he's going to be the guy in the touchline.
Subscribe now to the OTB Football Podcast stream wherever you get your podcasts and download the OTB Sports app.
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
6 minutes past 8. I'm delighted to say James Tracy is back with us to talk to us about we'll start with the URC, right? What's the rivalry like in the dressing room, the week of the game, the day of the game, in the middle of the game, and at halftime of the game? What is the bones of this rivalry against Munster? Is it as intense as it was when you started? Is it always going to be intense anyway because you're up against people for an Ireland jersey? What's it actually like?
From speaking from a personal point of view, I always had that hatred there, and as you said, you're fighting for a jersey, so I would have been I'm sure I'm not on the Christmas card list in the Scannell household, and neither was he in mine, but that's good. It was good having that rivalry of, that the hatred inside you, but also the years gone past of it's not an easy place to go to Thomond, it's a cauldron, and it's one of the best places to play for the wrong reasons in terms of it's so hostile, it's so intense, but that's why you play rugby, is to play in those moments. But to answer your question, in my opinion, the rivalry couldn't be more still there. Whether the results recently, we've been quite dominant, but if you ask any of them, I guarantee you they hate our guts. A lot of them anyway, and I would have had that same feeling playing any of the provinces. There was a lot of hate there from a personal point of view, but maybe I'm just a bit twisted.
Was that word hatred across the dressing room? Was that the case? Could you feel the dressing room was different when you're playing Munster?
Well, you've different characters, a lot
James Lowe's a lover, not a fighter.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, everyone just hates him, unless he's on your team, which is when you love him because he's scoring 1 or 2 tries a game. But listen, I can't speak for everyone, but certainly not being too traditional, but forwards would tend to get a bit more G'd up for a lot of things. Where it's more combative, you're in the trenches, it's a lot easier to build that hatred inside you than some, I don't know, like Johnny, I'm fairly sure has gotten fairly fired up over the years, but I can only speak for myself in saying that I definitely had that fire in me anytime I was playing a province of genuine dislike, and over time that goes away, but when you're in there you have yourself feeling that.
Does this start at underage, or does it only pretty properly manifest itself when you make the senior team and you're getting picked and you're like, oh, hang on a second, everybody here is just a little bit more on edge this week than they are when we're playing Zebra or Dragons or whoever?
I'd say it starts in school, to be honest. You know, like, I remember playing a few of the Munster schools and you're going down and they're kind of like have this chip in their shoulder about like these soft lads coming down from Leinster and like, you know, they're giving you a little bit extra in the rucks and everything like that. And like, listen, I all for it. I love that part of the game, but like that's definitely for me anyway where it started. And you know, some people mightn't feel like that exists, but I definitely felt it and I loved it. You know what I mean? I loved the abrasive side of it. But that's when it started for me. It was, and then you go into interprovincials in at underage, and that's the you know that's the biggest stage you can play on at that age. So it kind of starts from there, in my opinion, and kind of builds throughout.
Was the level of smack talk, I guess, in the middle of games taken to another level in those matches in the scrums? And
do you know what? COVID was the only time when the smack talk was at its highest, because you had to create atmosphere, right? And
very dangerous because everybody can hear you.
Well, like they had the dummy crowd noise to probably drown out a little bit. Okay. But I remember that was one part of. Well, obviously you missed having the atmosphere of the game there. There was one part of it I didn't like. Was like all the amount of chirping and going on, but like you had to try create energy somehow.
Yeah.
And I could listen. I was just as bad, if not the worst, at talking crap like in the middle of games. But definitely looking back, I didn't like that side of it. Versus you don't mind a few, like there's always going to be a bit of chirp here and there, but it was kind of like very almost American, you know, the amount of stuff that's been talked during COVID. But as I said, you had to create the atmosphere from somewhere because it was just dead stadium.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I was very concerned at the time when Joey Carberry was moved from Leinster to Munster, or / moved. It felt a little bit like this is a dangerous precedent to start taking good young players from one province and transplanting them to another, because it's going to be very difficult for them to feel exactly the same that you felt coming through the Leinster system. What was your instinct around the time of that happening? Was there a danger of that? Because it turns out there hasn't been. But I think maybe Munster have got better at bringing players through their system as well. So I think maybe I overreacted at the time. But what was when you were in the middle of that and this is happening, you're like, they're taking one of our really good players and they're making our main rival stronger. What's going on here?
Oh, you're obviously not happy about it. Especially like losing, you know, Joe. He's a great fella as well. Like he would have been a good part of the changing room. Never mind being a class player. So you're not delighted about that part. First of all, just losing him in general. But anyway, people make their decisions, and you know you're with the enemy then until you meet outside of rugby. You know, and then you're pals. But I can only speak from you know. Let's say like John McKee coming into Leinster, and like he's part of the furniture now, you know, like so it taking people in, I don't think it's probably as big a deal as it's made on the outside, but when you're losing someone to one of your rivals, especially someone who's very good, definitely you're not delighted about it, but again, it's out of your control.
I guess Leinster did benefit from like Robbie Henshaw, for example, so maybe it swings and roundabouts.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like there you go. Like that one, I'm sure a lot of the the Connacht faithful are still a bit salty about that one, and rightly so. He's one of the best centres of all time. But people got to make decisions for themselves at the end of the day, and 100% respect Joey and his decision, like Robbie and his decision. At the end of the day, it's doing what's right for you.
Okay, let's talk about the Sharks game last weekend and what Leinster will have learned from that. You've looked through it. What was your takeaways?
I think so. The Sharks, like crazy athletes, and I think the South African teams have brought so much to the URC in terms of just that X factor and dealing with these crazy big men, and also like that Williams try at the beginning was just like exceptional. You know, you just have guys they've like an extra gear of speed that I don't know we don't seem to have up here. But anyway, it's brilliant for us to be able to play against. But one of my takeaways is probably the difference between the good teams and the great teams is the attention to detail on like how they're running lines and all that side of things. So the great Felipe Contepomi taught me about the triangles probably later in my career than I would like to have known, because I've gotten in trouble from a lot of out halves about not knowing what line to run. But essentially that, if the ball carrier is running straight, that the next guy should be running a tight line, and if the ball carrier is running an overs line, so whether it be away from the ruck, that the next guy should be running a straight line. It sounds very simple, but a lot of the bad teams will have, not bad teams, when you don't run shape well, it's, you might have someone running straight, you might have someone running in, but they might be ahead of the ball, or they might be too deep, and they're never an option, or they don't look like they're ever going to be an option. While the good teams have, or they might be both running straight, or they might be both running overs. But the good teams, or the great teams, it's the timing of everyone is actually an option, instead of just having that, maybe have the person run straight, the person coming short, but they're never really an option. It's quite obvious to tell. And like a dummy runner, they're actually dummy runners, because one, they don't have the conviction, and two, they're probably not running the right line at the right time. I think what makes like the top tier European teams is the ability, the understanding of that, first of all, and the ability to do that time and time again. Because when you're defending, all of a sudden, if I see someone running a dummy line and I know they're not going to get it, I don't have to respect him. And then the guys outside me and outside, all of a sudden we're wider and we're able to press because we're not getting sucked in. Well, if I have to respect the short guy because he might actually get it, then all of a sudden everyone outside has to come in a tiny bit. And I just thought Leinster, if you watch the game back, Kieran Donaghy, exceptional example. He had for Deegan's try, he runs that Harry Byrne takes it straight. Kieran Donaghy comes in, sucks in a defender. Harry plays it out the back to Hugh Keenan, and they pick them off. Jack Conan to Max Deegan in the second, and later in the second half. Jack Conan, he was running on a bit of an overs. Kieran Donaghy straight, huge line break. So it's just the understanding and the execution from those guys at the minute is just exceptional, of the triangles, Felipe's triangles.
So Phil Jackson had the triangle offense that he ran with the Bulls, and it's the first time I'd ever read about it. I'm sure other people were doing it too, but if memory serves, Phil Jackson was ripping it off from some Knicks coach in the 50s or 60s. But so is that where Felipe got it? Is there a connection? Had anybody spoken to?
I'm
he the one
sure.
Who spoke about the triangles?
Yeah,
first?
but like it's how a lot of every attack is run. But it was just how it was explained to me in layman's terms. It was the first time I got it. I was like, okay, that makes it very easy, because a lot of the time, and a lot of people were guessing half the time of like, there's a feel of like, oh, it was the right time to come in, it was the right time to stay out or whatever. But it made it a lot more simple for me to understand, and like there is another layer of like, what's the defender doing, but even if you just understand that principle, it makes defending against it very hard, because
he's a good teacher, because he just taught us in like a minute and a half there, and we all understood it too, also in layman's terms, so that obviously worked out. He's brilliant. And he's left a massive mark, and the great thing is, like, Andrew Goodman is a new version, so he's got new ways of doing it. I talked about the teams and the different things, so like everyone has their own way of doing things, and things that they're brilliant at. So anyway, that was his kind of layer and stamp he left on me. Anyway, he did hell of a lot for Leinster, but that little nugget he gave to me. It looks like Goodman's staying around as well, after we were speculating after Rog had bounced that ball that time.
Can't believe that wasn't true, but it was such the source really gave it away. But I know, listen, he was definitely a shoe-in to be involved, even maybe in the Crusaders, in the conversation. And then of course, from what he'd done, from my experience with him, I'm not surprised if they were trying to get him over. It was probably the source that gave away for me.
Well, I'd say maybe it was, you think, wishful thinking on Roger's part to take him away from Leinster.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. And listen, in fairness, maybe it came from a good place of he's a class coach.
I'd say it did. So you want to talk about Healy last week?
Yes, yeah. So I think we're talking about Keane in general, of like the role he's now taken in the Irish and Leinster team. It's unbelievable. I don't think the level of difficulty to be able to play loose head and tight head in the same game, it's at that level, it's just unheard of, right? And he's just, obviously he played hooker at one point in, for the scrums in that Scotland game, was it? but just his, just get on with it ability is incredible. But unfortunately for him on the weekend, and the rite of passage for any tight end out there is getting your wings and getting lifted off the ground. But didn't affect him in any way. But I think that's the first one I've seen in a game.
Explain that.
So again, getting your wings is as a tighter. It only happen as a tighter prop, where the pressure coming from the back behind you and the opposition, and your legs leave the ground, and all of a sudden you're in the air. But listen, it's happened to every single tight end prop, whether it be in training or be in a match, and it is 100% a right. You're on your way to being a good tight end prop, because after that you learn the ground is your friend, and it's definitely a rite of passage.
That must be a comparison to another sport, like the ability to play tight end and loose head like so seamlessly. The skill level involved there is ridiculous.
Yeah. I like Keane's a generational player, and I loved scrumming with him at loosehead, but I just his aggression and want for going forward at tight head, like, he genuinely was one of my favourite people to scrum with in general, and I get jealous when I see, like, they had a big scrum penalty the last day, he was in with John, and just that feeling, because like I know when I'm packing down beside him, it's go time, especially with Porter as well.
This Munster team, obviously Fekitoa, Murray, Nash and Snyman are all out, and so it's going to be very difficult for them to overcome those injuries. Do they still have enough about them to win this game?
So they can definitely win the game, but I think they need a lot to go for them to win the game. I like, me being honest, I would say it'll be like a close first half, and I feel like we'll pull away in the second half and win comfortably. The only way I can see them getting into this game is getting rattling Leinster early. I think that's what they need to. So they're very good in the air. When I say the air, they're box kicking and chase and contesting in the air. So putting a lot of pressure on the guys in the backfield, getting momentum into the game, maybe getting a few scrum penalties here and there, a few turnover penalties. I know, like,
I was going to say, when you say rattle, like, they need to be 21-0 up with a man advantage for Leinster to be rattled at this stage.
Not quite. I like, rugby and sport is very fickle. When you're going well, everyone is, wants to know the secret sauce and how are you so unbeatable. But a chink in the armour, a mistake, all it takes is, a mistimed tackle, anything to either give a yellow card or a big swing in momentum, and all of a sudden things can change. Do I think Leinster win? I do. I think they should win, by a couple of scores. But how can Munster get into it? I think they need to rattle Leinster early and just get them out of their game, get them out of their flow, and it's like pressure game. They need Leinster to make mistakes.
We asked you to pick a 15 for this week, with the following week in mind, which is obviously the same job that Leo Cullen and Lancaster and the rest of the crew have. How do they do that? How do they make sure that everybody arrives at the La Rochelle game primed and ready to go? Like, for us, outsider, like, they need to get some game time or some minutes, but that's not really the case, is it? Like, when do you feel like most players need to have last played before they can play at their absolute peak?
So again, it's different for different players. For me, and I'm not at the elite level of a lot of those lads, but when I was playing, I needed to be playing every week. But there's some guys, like, you could leave, like Johnny, you could leave him out for 6 months, and I would be 100% confident he goes in there that he's gonna run the ship well. If you look at Charlie Natai, off for like huge break, again, I'd be 100% confident. I think the more experienced you are, the less probably you need under your belt. A bit more when you're a bit more of a cart horse and you like playing every week, it suits you. You get in the flow of playing more. And when I say cart horse, I was more of a cart horse. So I like, my picking of the team was, I think there'll be a lot of continuity from last week. I think that they have an opportunity to do that, so I can't see why they won't. They'll throw in a sprinkle of guys to freshen it up, but I think why not? Like, the team played pretty well last week, bit of continuity, and kick on then for the next week.
You've picked Milne, Kelleher, Healy in the front row, Baird and Jenkins in the second row, and then it's Deegan, and then it's Penny/Connors. I guess that's dependent on
injury. Yeah.
Conan at 8. McGrath and Harry Byrne 9 and 10. Dave Carney and either Larmer or Jimmy O'Brien on
Penny
the wings.
on injury there. I saw Jordan was off injured, wasn't he?
And Natai and Frawley in the centre with Hugo Keenan playing fullback. When you look at the injuries that Munster got, this is a contact sport. You get lucky some weeks and you get no injuries and you get absolutely decimated with 5 players coming off injured. The Leinster squad is really big, and you'd say at this stage they're so well tuned that nobody is indispensable. But is there anybody who you just wouldn't risk this week just to make sure that they're at least on the starting lineup next week?
Well, I've gone a different perspective on it. I've gone the team that played last week. I've gone just for continuity in terms of it's hard chopping and changing every week, and that's one of the challenges of it's great having a big squad, but as a player it's hard being chopped and changed and having different partnerships and different things going on. So I think for the sake of continuity, that's probably what the thinking a little bit would be is get this. It means also the lads who aren't playing, they have the continuity of training against this team the whole time. So you have 2 teams who are in whatever 3 or 4 sessions a week, having the same partnerships, having the same people training against each other. I think that's more important than kind of like, because you can't, the moment you go into kind of like wrapping cotton wool, you pick up like the silliest knocks, or like that's actually when you get more chance of getting injured, when you're trying to not get injured.
I was watching Andy Kyriakou, the Munster forwards coach, speaking during the week, and he was talking about, he was asked consistently about the weight of history and this poor record that the Munster players have playing Leinster, especially away from home. Is that something that just the media and people outside are worried about, or do you genuinely believe that the Munster players will be thinking about the history and the fact that they just can't seem to get over Leinster?
It's definitely in the back of your head. Like, I know from with playing against teams that like when they consistently have beaten you over the years, you always just have, when I was in school, that team was like Black Rock. It was like, before we got in the field, we'd beaten ourselves. But like, I know I'm pals with Tyg Byrne, and I know like he wants nothing more than to beat Leinster, and he won't be worrying about what anyone else thinks about the games that have gone before. He's just going to want to be trying to get the team on his back and coming up with big moments, and like he's going to be pivotal for how they do. Like, he has an exceptional game. I think that they're right in it, and they're going to depend on him.
What's Sleamy like?
Sleamy's a legend. I couldn't speak higher of him. I think he's like probably the biggest asset they've gotten in terms of like culture fit, as well as like class, detail, the contact side of things. No, he was absolutely brilliant in his time. A lot of like, it's funny, when someone comes from, you have again this perception of like, like, I didn't say I hated him, but like definitely didn't like him over the years, because he was just such a big character for Munster.
Very good.
Exactly. That also helps towards thing. But you get to know people and like, absolute legend of the game, 1 and 2, gentleman, and I'd say if you ask any of the Munster players, they'd rave about him.
Have you met Scandal since you retired? Is there peace breaking out now that you're civilian again?
Not quite yet, but I listen to anytime you're off the pitch, it's all good. But I think it's healthy to have that bit of competition.
Well, we're about to talk to Kieran Donaghy, and like famously, at the end of the All Ireland final, he goes, "What do you think about that, Joe Brawley?" Like the individual battle that you have with whoever it is that makes you not eat badly or do the extra bit of work that you, oh my God, I just can't get the motivation to do this. But if you have a direct rival who you think might be doing it down the road, then sport is weird like that. You kind of need to be a bit psychotic.
Yeah, I think, especially to play rugby, to be a bit tapped. No, it's a great part. It's part of the game that I certainly relished in. I loved the competition side of it, and the rivalry side of it, and I definitely didn't shy away from how, like, expressing that side of it when I played, and it doesn't mean that I'll carry it on forever, but definitely in any
slowly it'll
slowly it withers away. But yeah, the competitor, I don't think ever leaves you when you're in the field of play, but I think life moves on.
You've given us a prediction that as the second half wears on, that Leinster should be able to see them off. Is that fair enough? That's where that's what you're sticking with.
Yeah, I think the longer the game goes on, I think we'll wear them down. Munster of they were like a very good fence. So they would play with what I would call kind of like a 14 kind of 1 with the wingers on a pendulum, we'll say, right? So explain that. They like when you're attacking against them, it feels like you're attacking against 20 people and they're all just in front of you. And their wingers are very clever at reading kicks. So they come from the backfield into the front line very quickly as you're trying to attack, and all of a sudden there's like an extra man there. But how you punish those sorts of defences is those attacking kicks. So I feel like if Leinster can pin them back and punish that and try get them to get it wrong with their wingers closing early, I feel like we'll do well against them. But the great part of that defence system gives you loads of poach opportunities because you have a lot of men around the ball. So that's the threat. So if Munster can get a few early poaches, Coombs will probably be playing, Bernie be playing. So like they have a lot of guys who will be on hard at the ball.
All right.
Yeah, that's their chance to get
good stuff. James, enjoy the game. That's brilliant. Thanks a million.
Thanks, Bill.
We'll have more from Alan Quinlan later on in the week from the Munster perspective as well in the build up to that. Now, Kieran Donaghy is with us. Kieran, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, Ger. How are you?
I'm very well. What's the crack?
Not too bad, man. How are you getting on?
Yeah, good. Nice quiet time for you. We have promised that we're not going to talk Gaelic football. So we want to talk basketball with you, right?
Okay.
Can I ask you one question about the roadshow that the lads had the other night? James Donaghy had a story, and Tommy Rooney is casting aspersions on the veracity of it. You might be able to vouch for this. Before games, Paul Galvin would squat Mike Quirk. Is this true or false?
Yeah, no, it's true. And when Mike retired, I became the heaviest player in the dressing room, so I was often on Paul Galvin's back before we games. And I was on his back during games too, because he carried us through a lot of them. But no, yeah, it's a definite thing. I think it was a thing about firing up the quads for being explosive around the pitch. So yeah, probably maybe not the safest thing in the world to have the likes of myself and Mike on your back, but it was definitely something that he did before every game. It mightn't be quite a set of 8 that James said. I kind of remember maybe 3 or 4 just to get the quads firing right before we went to the pitch. But yeah, Paul was obviously incredibly dedicated in his prep for games and performing at his best for Kerry. So there was no such thing as embarrassment if he felt that something could maybe get him an extra inch or 2 around the pitch.
Fair enough.
There's the psychological element of that as well. It's as well as getting his quads ready. Other players are probably looking at that, going, "Jesus, this is This is serious.
We're on it today."
Oh yeah, no, he was an animal. Obviously, you'd see him on the pitch, and people would have seen the way he played and all that, but just in terms of his prep and what he put into it, he's very detailed orientated and would have looked at every little factor to try and get an inch. So if he read somewhere that firing up your quads with a large amount of weight on your back before a game, he wouldn't be shy in asking the biggest fella to jump up in it for a few minutes.
Well, it definitely worked. Come here, we had John Feehan, the CEO of Basketball Ireland, in studio last week talking about the strategic plan. I just wanted to get your perspective as somebody who is deeply embedded in the culture of basketball in Ireland. What's your instinct about where the sport is at the moment and the plan, and just generally how quickly or otherwise there might be some room for progress?
Look, the plan is good really around it. The theories of, more teams is obviously an important one. Obviously trying to get more players, things like table official referees. As we know, being a referee is never any fun in most sports, but especially basketball, because you're so close contact with the ref. It's such a fast moving game that, obviously as many mistakes as players as we make, they make mistakes, but in our eyes, they're nearly not allowed to. So it's not easy being a ref. So I can see why they're looking to get more refs in the game. I know this year we started the season with 3 refs at all games, and then for lots of games it ended up being 2. So there's obviously a shortage there. So they're obviously looking at that to improve that. But yeah, just a general, awareness of the game has probably never been higher. I think the Super League is probably at a really good position now, just short of maybe what it was in the 80s and 90s, and I think the reason for that, and I know I listened to yourself and John and Shane talking about the plan, and I know you kind of quizzed him on the TV thing, but that's really where, you know, they need to figure out, can they get games possibly on, you know, Tina G on Friday nights, big games in the big stadiums, whether it be in Tralee or Neptune, or if they bring a big Dublin derby to the arena and really market it and sell it out and get kids over to it and let kids in for free, all those kind of things. I think that's really where it needs to go to get into the general public's eye. That would really, I know I'm currently looking for a spot. You know, we have Garbage Tree Warriors who've been very good to us, but you know, the league is at such a level now. There's 2 Americans in the league next year, so funds is always a thing for teams. So, you know, to satisfy the likes of Jim and the Garvey group, if you could say, listen, you know, there's going to be a game, you have the cup final and the league final that are on TV, it's great, but I think where people are and the amount of times people come up talking to me about basketball now, whether it be the Super League, the Irish team, or obviously the NBA, it's never been on people's tongues more, I think. You know, it's obviously the phones, it's hitting us. The NBA is such a product at the moment, even the EuroLeague. We'd have Daniel Jokubaitis here, who's from Lithuania, one of our best players in Tralee over the last number of years. You know, the EuroLeague is sensational and sensational to watch. You're talking about crowd. If anybody wants to see the difference between NBA crowds and European crowds, just type NBA basketball and European basketball into the YouTube and you'll see the difference between the crowds and just the fervour that is around the European basketball game, whether it's Real Madrid, Olympiacos, Panathinaikos, Barcelona, all these big teams. You know, the TV is where it's obviously at, and you know, I like everything to do with the plan, but I think there does need to be a real push to see, can you get Virgin Media, can you get Tina G, can you get RT to maybe look at games on a Friday evening that there is a gap in the market, whether there's no rugby on at that time of year or there's a little gap. Can we get a few of these big basketball games on? Because we played Neptune here during the last game of the season, and it was, you know, they beat us by 1. Jordan Blunt had an incredible 3-pointer to win the game at the death. But as terms of a product, if you had cameras like that, you know, the country would be talking about it because it was just electric. The crowd that was in the hall, the noise, the foghorns, the show that was put on by the Warriors committee beforehand. It was an incredible product, and it's nothing short of, if TV cameras were there, it would make such a difference because it just helps promote the game. It helps obviously with the amount of viewers you're reaching. It helps with your sponsors when you go to them, that they're really getting something, a bang for their buck, if they know there's a possibility more than 1 or 2 being a cup final or a league final that games might be on TV. So that's just the only place where I would say that possibly falls short, is there has to be a real push to get in front of people's eyes, especially if you're looking for funding off Sport Ireland for the elite teams and all. Tina G do a great coverage of them games. But yeah, that'd be the big one for me.
That's what it is, Kieran, isn't it? It's word of mouth, because I know John was saying, John Feehan, that they want 260 clubs, I think, by 2027 in this 5-year strategic plan across the country. And we've spoken to you about that before, the match day experience, and people don't often realise how close they are maybe to an Irish basketball game in their locality, and as you say, the lights, t-shirts being thrown out of cannons, the music, just the atmosphere. You nearly have to be there or have spoken to someone who has been there to really experience it, and that becoming more visible on TV, as you said, can only help.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think even when the coverage of the national games is on the arena, there's 2,000 people packed in there. It's electric, and sometimes I'd nearly be saying that when they're going through the game with the analyst, you nearly want them just to start going around the crowd and start actually trying to get the atmosphere, because you're often trying to hear the commentators talk pre-game or the analysts talk pre-game about what's going on. Whereas you see when you watch the NBA, they're big into getting cameras on the crowd, getting cameras on the smoke machines, the lights going off, all that kind of intro stuff. So I think there's a small bit there that we can even improve on with the national team games. But, anybody who's been to a top level close basketball game with a big crowd, obviously you've had the cup finals over the year, which is obviously our flagship product. But even that cup semi-final weekend that takes place below in Neptune Stadium and the Mardyke and Blue Demons, they're electric atmospheres. And I think we might have been the first crowd in Tralee that tried to do the cheapest NBA product ever with getting the lights off and lasers and lights on the floor and that kind of smoke machines and that kind of entry team to just jazz it up a small bit. But a lot of teams are really buying into that now. We played against Mary, who won the cup this year, and they had a huge crowd in Galway. They were obviously having a great season. They blew us out of the game by 30 points, but the atmosphere inside there was unbelievable because they went the extra mile with just making something special for the kids, that when they go to it, that they just want to go back, and that that they want to go and see these players play. And I think anything being on TV, it plays a huge role in kind of promoting the game and making the league even more special, and players wanting to play because as John said, it's a semi-pro league. You've got your few Americans that are getting paid. There's 2 Americans in every team, so the product is even going to be better this year. You're going to have 4 Americans on the floor at all times, so that's going to make the standard higher, the games better. Looking to get something on a station on a Friday night, maybe move one big game every 3 weeks to a Friday night, pick your marquee games and your marquee venues and just get it going that way initially. I think will play a big part in raising the profile of the league to an even higher level, and probably helping all the points that John has and Basketball Ireland having that 5-point plan with new teams, new refs. If all that stuff is on TV more, that will automatically happen.
One of the other things that we talked about briefly at the end was centralised contracts this side of rugby, and just how transformative that would be if you reach a certain level and then all of the clubs have one player who's paid for by central contract. That's potentially a game changer for the national side and for the league.
Yeah, it would be huge, of course, and obviously that will probably happen. How far it is down the line, I don't know. Funding is a huge part. Sport Ireland probably play a big part. The government play a big part in getting behind basketball a bit more. I know John has said that they're really interested in what they're talking about, but there's nothing shows interest than pumping money into the sport. It's the largest indoor sport we play. There's a huge diversity in the game. It's playable. There's never games called off. That national team program, I know Owen Quigley that works with us here in PST, it was on the Irish national team. They're looked after well, but I know it could be so much better for them. They're playing at the highest level. They're competing against really good teams. There was NBA players in the arena last year playing against them. So, if that could be brought on to another level, that would definitely help with the game, Ger. There's no doubt about it. But, there's funding needed to push the sport. And, I've obviously always been a strong advocate for basketball in this country. And I think it does need a big push from both the government and Sport Ireland to really get behind the game. The level of talent, Ger, that we have coming out now that are heading to 4-year scholarships, if they knew that they had a serious national team program to come back, if they knew they could come back and be the main guy in their town, in their club, you be guys that would be coming out of the 4-year scholarship would want to possibly play in Ireland with being of a contract where he goes for the next number of years. As long as he's healthy, he'll be able to start getting a house, setting up a family. And if those guys kind of really tying themselves in with the national team and their club team, your profile of the league goes through the roof. Like you see a kid like Adrian Fulton, what he's doing in the States is unbelievable. The level of basketball he's playing and where he potentially could go. It's sky's the limit for these guys that are coming out of Ireland now as 17-year-olds, raw, talented, hungry, and then they go to America and they go from playing 4 to 6 hours a week to playing 20, 28 hours a week with the amount of practice they do before and after school over there. That's a huge rise in their talent levels. If they want it and they want to work hard, there's no reason why they can't, why Sky couldn't be the limit for all of them.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's really exciting when you start to think like that. And maybe some of the Americans who come over could be Irish qualified, and then suddenly this is kind of a rolling ball of knives that just.
The national team going well. The national team going well at a high level would just skyrocket the game in the country because they've done very well over the last number of years. Like they've climbed up the leagues in Europe. And the coaching staff, Mark and them, have done a great job with them. But yeah, just that level of, if guys that are going over to the States could look at possibly a future for themselves in the game of basketball in Ireland, that would be massive for the country.
Lakers beat the Warriors again on Monday night. Kieran, 3-1 up in the series, one win away from the Western Conference Finals. I mean, it's LeBron and Steph. Basketball fans absolutely spoiled at the minute with the playoffs. But it was Lonnie Walker who tore it up in the final quarter for the Lakers. So it's really heating up.
Yeah, it's really heating up. Yeah, Lonnie I think he had 15 points in the last quarter. So, an incredible for a role player. Although he was a really good player for them at the start of the season until they figured out their roster, and he probably fell down a small bit. But, the level of talent that these fellas have low down the rosters in the NBA is bonkers. We probably see them rocking the bench and playing garbage minutes at the end of the game. But these fellas are at another level. And yeah, Lonnie was unbelievable the last day. I think the Warriors probably missed the trick. They looked to be causing Anthony Davis huge problems with high pick and rolls. And, I think it was Stan Van Gundy might have been the co-commentator on the game last night. And, he was freaking out about why they weren't just running that every single time down the court, because it was really causing them trouble. So the series isn't over. People may think it is. LeBron's a killer when he gets into this position. But, the Warriors, when they're playing at home and that crowd is up, and, a team that hits that many 3-pointers, it can just start to play in your mind a small bit later on. And, if Clay and Steph hit fire over there, and they get a Jordan Poole a small bit more consistent, Wiggins has a good game, Draymond's going to be Draymond, he's going to carry the energy for them. So, they win game 5, all of a sudden it's 3-2, and then all the pressure is really on LA in game 6. And, there's twists and tails potentially in the series, yet I don't see it as simple as the Lakers going closing it out in game 5. So yeah, it's some fascinating series going on at the moment. The level of basketball is, and the way the game is played, there's probably a reason I don't watch too much of the regular season. It's very much go through the motions for 3 quarters, and it's understandable. They've 82 games. You can't, in your right mind, potentially be up for every one of those games. But when it comes to the playoffs, it's do or die stuff, and you start seeing fellas diving. You saw LeBron fly into row 8 or 9 the last night trying to save a ball, when they're up 12. So it's a different game, the playoffs, but yeah, unbelievable at the moment.
Great to have you back, Kieran. Enjoy the weekend, whatever happens. Best of luck with it. Thanks a million.
You're the man, Ger. All right, bye. Be safe.
Good to talk to you. Kieran Donaghy gave us an impassioned reason why basketball is about to explode in Ireland, and hopefully he's right. If you want to get in touch, 087 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition is available now. Vinny Perth, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning. How are you all doing?
Nice quiet week in sport.
Yeah, really quiet. Nothing going on. Government getting involved with sport again, and fair play to the GAA. They know how to stay right in front and centre of politics and life in Ireland, and let them sort it out themselves. But I'm sure law will work out eventually.
It was interesting when Declan McBennett was on telly last night. He was talking about the massive number of GAA matches and the massive number of rugby matches, and loads more Irish football than we've ever shown before. It was like, not the number though. Is it how many League of Ireland matches is it? Is it
not enough? Is
it double digits? Is it just over double digits? I'm not sure. But they're not as committed to that as they are to the GAA anyway.
No, and I suppose they'll say the viewing figures, and you'll hear all this stuff, but I think RTE and in particular have a responsibility to sport. You've just been speaking about basketball, and my challenge with it, from listening from the outside, is how do you fix what the problem is? How do you fix it? Do you just play GAA all weekend? Do you turn on your telly on RTE 1, 2 and watch GAA all weekend? So they've moved to GAAGO, and that's effectively pay-per-view or whatever the right word is, but so was Sky, but the world is changing, lads. I don't think I was in Crow Park. You can't pay cash anymore, with stuff I do, some things I do outside of sport. People are paying, the older generation who aren't paying their bills on their phones now and topping up in cards, and life has moved on. So it all, I smell a rat from all different angles, Politicians will look for extra votes by we've got to get it on telly.
I'm always very squeamish when the politicians are coming on. We started the show with the politician this morning, but there was definitely, I think in fairness he is raising legitimate questions that he has an answer, might get a chance to answer. But when the Taoiseach and the Taoiseach are will I say something that is very wildly popular?
Because they know it's going to be unreal in the ears and they have to get their little soundbite in.
Maybe, yeah, but it's more that there's no consequence to what they say.
Well, yeah.
There's literally no consequence. They can say whatever they want about this, and other people are going to have to.
The way my brain works, throw one back at you. What's the solution to it? Genuine question.
Honestly?
Yeah, if money was no object, what's the solution?
Well, I don't think that the national broadcaster, who is the only now client for championship matches, should be allowed to be in partnership with the GAA for a separate organisation which is bidding against them.
I get that, but what's the solution for show matches?
Some matches will have to be paid for. Some matches will, and there needs to be a decision about what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. I do think.
Then the cynical in me is this, although getting some bad publicity, is the GAA ultimately going to be paid some money by government as a subsist, like whatever as a grant?
Pay for it?
Eventually, well, we're heading down that way. It feels like in the background
we give a lot of money to the GAA at the moment.
Yeah, but maybe they could do a little bit more.
Well, if money was no object, the national broadcaster should have a sports-specific channel on terrestrial television.
Well, that would be great, because then there's loads of room for all of the sports. So is that where the discussion needs to go to, where there's actually a channel called RTE Sport, just sport channel, that provides the service?
Yeah. No coronations on the OT Sport channel.
Well, maybe no Coronation Street, and maybe I don't know. I think our relationship as a country with the national broadcaster is something that should be constantly up for conversation, because I don't think soccer fans are happy with their treatment.
No, and it's not just soccer fans, but the bottom line to it is, speaking as a soccer person or whatever the right word is, that it can't be just a GAA discussion. This one is, but don't forget soccer in all of these. Don't forget all the other different sports, and it's amazing how many people jump up and down when I accept it's a national game. It's not something I'm overly interested in, but it's a national game. I shouldn't be turning on the channel all weekend and just seeing that sport. It should be mixed that reflects the whole society, because it is a state-funded TV, and it should reflect society. There's more people watching sport or soccer than GAA, I would say to you.
Yeah, and I think ancillary to this conversation is the conversation about greyhound racing and the millions and 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 millions that we've given to greyhound racing over the last.
But what's good about it is to make the point is, we're now on the back of the horse racing discussion that came up. On the back of this, maybe somebody in government might actually realise sport is hugely important to Irish people. Not just a minister who's, and not to be dismissive of the current Minister for Sport. We're not just Minister for Sport and something else, actually a Minister for Sport, dedicated to sport, and someone who has a real, a proper department of sport.
Yeah. Because
it's so, I keep saying it is so important to society that we live in, the sport, whether it's kids playing basketball, hurling under 8s, or basketball, ladies football, all of these things. It's so important that somebody takes notice of. So maybe it's part of a bigger discussion that needs to be had, but not just throw money at the solution.
There is loads of money floating around, though. Do you know? And if it was spent properly, it would actually have a knock-on impact on health, on integration, and loads of different things.
Well, the advantage, the last point, the advantage the GAA have is they've now got an income that has to be replaced if they stop the GAAGO. So straight away, that's the cynic in me.
Well, GAAGO already makes $1 million a year profit, and that was before they had the domestic market the way that they have now. That was just from the international streaming a couple of years ago. Anyway, we're supposed to be talking League of Ireland.
Sorry, yep.
Quiet week in the League of Ireland too.
Oh yeah, you could say that. I mean, we had a brilliant game on. Well, it wasn't a brilliant game, brilliant occasion. Tallaght Stadium is obviously an exceptional stadium. It was. You have to be careful. It was quite a routine enough win for Rovers in the end, but Bows were very good on the day. But it wasn't a brilliant game. There was a lack of quality in the final third from both teams. That has to be said. But I mean, Rovers' last 8 games, I think they've won 7, scored 19 goals, conceded 3. They're playing exceptional at the moment. But and I'd like to think on here I've waxed lyrical about Rovers and Bows at different stages, so much so people in Tallaght have questioned me health. Am I okay? Right? When they hear me going, you're too nice to Rovers. And I've defended referees. I just thought Bows got done on Friday. Wasn't good enough. It was a very one-sided performance. It was a game of fine margins, and so many of the fine margins went against Bohemians. I've seen some people debate whether it was a penalty or not. It was just a penalty. You can't. It was completely out of control.
Declan Devine very unhappy afterwards.
Yeah, and rightly so. But it's funny when you're at game live. So when they scored the first goal, my first reaction, because I'm neutral and I don't have to celebrate the goal, was to look at the linesman, because my sense was Trevor Clark was offside,
right,
and he was offside. When you've got a really strong referee, you always find, because people's question about the penalty decision is why didn't the linesman get involved? And when you've got a really strong referee who's a very senior referee, sometimes you find linesmen don't tend to interfere with the senior guy. So I thought the fine margins went Rovers' way. The first incident in the game was a ball over the top of Lee Grace, and I felt Dillon Connolly got in behind him. I felt that was an area for Bohs to exploit. Went shoulder to shoulder with Lee Grace and a free out against Dillon Connolly, and I sat with a couple of people and pointed out this could be a long night for Bohs, and it turned out that way.
Yeah, and in fairness to you, even when things weren't going great for Rovers at the start of the season, when they were drawing games, you were like, it's going to happen, and it could happen as quickly as this weekend, because Bohs have Derry City at home and Rovers are at UCD, and Rovers will be top more than likely after that.
Yeah, you would say so. Look, to be fair to Bohs, what they've done all season is when they've lost games, they've bounced back and won. And this would be a huge win for them if they were to beat Derry this week. A home to Derry. Derry's form has just been okay. It's even beating Drogheda the other night. They weren't, wasn't an outstanding performance. They're missing some senior players. That will obviously be the excuse, and rightly so. I mean, Cameron Dummigan, Connolly, centre half, Patrick McElhenney is missing. So that's a huge blow for any team in the league, and probably only Rovers could deal with that. But they go to Bohs this week, who have been good in Dalymount, have always bounced back. So there's a big lesson to be learning this weekend, because it's an interest, and it's for so people understand the European clubs will have a weekend off later in the season. So to allow for that, the four of them will play each other on Monday. So Derry will play Dundalk and Rovers will play St. Pat's. So the four of them in Europe, to give them breathing space later on the season. So it's a big weekend for Derry. They play a good Dundalk team that are in form, and Bohs away. So it could be a good weekend for Bohs, or for Rovers, should I say.
One of the things there about Bohs and coming back, it's really important that they don't allow this just to peter out, that this wasn't just a surge at the start of the season. They need to make sure that, like a little bit like Arsenal in recent weeks, where there was a blip but then they recover from it, and they keep the pressure up on Rovers, because otherwise Rovers could open up a gap over the next few weeks, and very hard to claw that back.
Yeah, and I think to be fair, the Bohs have got to ride that sort of wave of momentum, the feel-good factor around their team, the dressing room, the way they've played well at different stages, but even when they haven't played well, they've won games. So and I think getting to the window for them is important. I feel they've got the finance in place to be able to strengthen that team and push on. Securing European football, I think, would be a marvellous achievement for them. They've lost the last two Dublin derbies to Rovers, and being sort of, albeit the game went against them the other night, they've lost both of them 2-0, and Rovers, in their view, would say they're comfortably ahead of them. So if Bohs are going to be the nearest challengers, then they've got to stay on their coattails and get to the window and see can they sign some players.
James McLean joining Derry, if that did happen, would be brilliant for the league, right? Mm-hmm. Would he still get in the Ireland squad? Because he still merits a place at the moment.
Yeah, I don't see that happening.
Which bit? Him coming now?
I don't think it'll happen now. Could be wrong. And I think I would say he will lose his place in the Ireland squad if he goes to Derry.
Right.
And I think he'd be aware of that, and he'll probably get one more year, I would say, a championship. Now look, I could come out of studio today and he signs for Derry. I have no information. I was actually in the hotel on Friday, and the Derry squad walked in, chatting to the guys, and obviously a lot of close friends in Derry. I've no information on that, but I just don't see it happening.
Okay.
So I think he'll take another year with his international place being important to him.
Bit of managerial turnover in the league in the last couple of weeks. Tim Clancy gone from Pats, John Daly winning start as interim manager, and then you see Cork City looking for applications to replace Colin Healy as well. Do your ears prick up when you hear of a managerial vacancy pop up?
Yeah, not to not answer your question and not to be all politician about it. I think it's important to say Tim Clancy's a good example where really harsh when someone leaves League of Ireland football, and the pile on now on social media and different bits and pieces. And Tim's got, you know, a partner and 2 young kids. I think he's married, I don't know, but the point stands. And remember when Tim Clancy left his job, it was on the 6-1 news, right? So it's like it hurts and it's deep and really, really hurts. And I'll come off Tim for a second and just give you a little insight. Like most League of Ireland managers, the average wage is probably about 40, maybe 50,000. So obviously people on a little bit higher than that, a little bit less. So you're not walking, and with contracts you may be entitled to 6-9 months or whatever, but you're going back to work pretty soon. And it's a really difficult life, League of Ireland management. It's great, it's brilliant, we all love it and want to do it, but it's not as easy as people think. I remember when I left, the neighbours on the road knew why the car was in the garden. Like it's and they're only small things. You know, my kids knew, they know, like it's not, as I said, it was on the 6-1 news, like as part of the bulletin, and you still have to earn money. And the problem with, since I've left, I've only applied for 1 job since I've left Dundalk, and in that time I pulled out that job halfway through the process because it became a social media pile-on. And remember, you're probably working somewhere else. I mean,
what do you mean social media pile-on? Like?
As in, once these jobs, once they're not replacing managers very quickly, then that allows Billy 1, 2, 3, 4 say Vinny Perth hasn't a clue what he's doing. Sure, it was only Stephen Kenny's team or whatever it is they'll say about Clancy or about Colin Healy at the moment. So the club should make quicker decisions, I would feel, and get people in place. And because we live in that world now, it is really, really difficult time for people. And remember, so I still have to put bread on the table in my house. So being linked to another job or being spoken about, you'll have a boss ring and you go, are you leaving us?
Yeah.
Now, when I left Dundalk the second time, what happened around that same time? Solskjaer walked away with 7 million, right? And I walked away with a 2-year contract that was deemed null and void. So people need to give people a bit of a break, and we're in and out job. I understand we're all fans and we want the best. That I'm here talking about games, or people will talk about Premiership, but League of Ireland is still in its infancy, and it's a really difficult place for young managers. And I really feel for Tim. I think he will be better as a result of it. I know if I do go back in at any stage, even the second time I went to Dundalk, I felt I was so much better as a manager. He will be a better manager for it. But that's a long-winded way. I'm not answering your question, but you have to understand that people have to provide for the families on 50, 60, maybe if you're lucky to be on 60,000. Once that stops, you've got to go back to work. Like, we've people in our league working as postmen, and we've people working in different bits and pieces. So it's a really difficult time when you're linked to these jobs and different things.
Obviously, it's harder then after you go back to find an employer. It's like, oh, you want to come work for us for 3 months or 6 months or whatever. I hadn't really thought of that. Is there a solution to that like, obviously you don't want to just have a carousel of only 3 or 4 managers who are ever available for jobs in the League of Ireland, but is there some way that if you were thinking about football in Ireland and thinking long term strategically from the FAI's perspective, they need more Indigenous coaches. They need good quality coaches at every level, at the academy level in the League of Ireland clubs and the schoolboy clubs, and however they make peace there, best of luck with that. But they also need like young competitive coaches who are getting their opportunities in Ireland and then hopefully going abroad and broadening the pool. At the moment it seems you need to have a number of Ireland caps and then you can get part of the Ireland underage setup. Is there a better way of doing that maybe that isn't just...
Well, there's no industry in this country for coaches. So, and I think when you look at how good the RFU are, for argument's sake, I would say to you, if I'd have been, and they're different, but if I'd have been an RFU coach who came out of work, I think I'd be working somewhere. They would. and they would find employment for me somewhere, whether that would be Connacht 20s or
be a pathway there.
Pathway somewhere to say we need someone who's, remember Ireland's only produced so far, I think it's less than 100 pro licensed coaches, and X amount of, like, some unfortunately passed away, some aren't from the country, so there's only a small pool of them people. I think there's no industry here. I think people ignore a little bit of experience as well. Look at Sean Dyche, look at Roy Hodgson at the moment, look even at Warnock going in to save Huddersfield. People ignore that a little bit in terms of it's all about what's new, what's coming through, and sometimes they forget that. But I think there's a huge appointment on the way within FEI, the assistant director of football. Okay, so they appointed Mark Adam a couple of years ago, and the assistant role is up now. And my point about something like that is, if that's going to go to someone who has 50, 60, 20, 80 caps, no problem. Once they've earned it.
Yeah.
For example, if Damien Duff gets a high-profile job now, he's earned it. He's earned his bloody stripes and he's done his work. But in that role, if, for example, Ger O'Brien at St. Pat's or Shane Robinson at Shamrock Rovers, or even within the FEI, Will Clark, aren't on a short list of 4 or 5 people for that role and aren't properly interviewed, that role should be given to people who've done the hard yards and young Irish coaches who have done a huge amount of work. You look at the players. We've got players in Serie A playing at the moment, produced by St. Pat's, who was led by the academy director. We've got Gavin Bazuna, who was produced by Shamrock Rovers. So we know what we're doing in the country. But I have a big fear that the FEI are going to go down the road of appointing people with caps just for the sake of it, and it is sexy, and it'll make good headlines. Such and such player is involved with this, but make sure they've done the hard yards. And so there's no industry, and it's really, really difficult for people to find a pathway. My own personal experience, I had to come out of it. I had to earn money. Did I do well out of football? Absolutely, but I had to earn money. And then I can't go to an employer, as you said, and say, hey, yeah, you see that stuff they're all talking about on social media there. I am applying for that job in the background. Yeah. And if I get it, I'm just going to walk out the door next Friday because I've got to go again Friday night.
Definitely not distracted by it at all.
No, and it's and it's stuff that's in the back of the papers and it's on social media and people hear stuff and the world we live in now. So very difficult for us coaches because there's no industry and people have to give them a little bit of breathing space, a little bit.
All that negative stuff notwithstanding, like the lack of money available for managers and the social media pylons, do you have the itch to go back?
Oh yeah, I absolutely do. And like when I talk about experience, like you look at maybe Allardyce, he probably gives that sort of line of a bad name in terms of the way he went out, and I'm trying to be careful how I answer this, but absolutely do. I, like, rightly or wrongly, I believe in myself. Not many people in the last 10 years have won a league title in this country. Very few are working. Obviously Stephen Bradley, and someone who certain sections would jump on, John Caulfield, is doing a brilliant job at Galway, because it takes a little bit of know-how to win a league and a little bit of ability, and mightn't be the sexiest name in the world, but at the same time absolutely have the itch. I'd love to do it, but it may not happen, and I'm okay and I'm comfortable with that, because you had a good innings, and if your time is up, it's up. But no, absolutely interested in it. Love the game. Probably at more football matches than anybody else physically. I was at 3 o'clock last week on 5 o'clock game and watched the 7 o'clock game. So really, really would love to do it, but it's all about timing and it's about context. And for example, my daughter sent me a screenshot last week. So I think it must be 125 Emmett Road, or must be the address of St. Pat's. But I was seen down there last week. But at the same time, I was in Drogheda at a meeting.
Right.
At the same time. So she was going, are you going back to St. Pat's? And I was going, I'm in Drogheda at a meeting. Like.
Yeah.
So it's just the world we live in now. So to answer your question, absolutely believe in myself. I've won a league. I still am the reigning League Cup winning manager because you haven't played the competitions in a while. So.
That's fair, yeah. Technicalities.
I don't know where the trophy is actually. I must find
Dig it out.
Yeah.
Vinny, good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us. OTB AM live with Gillette Lab. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition is available now. Some highlights from the OTB Podcast Network available for you today. Graham Souness, Kevin Kilban and Rugby Daily all up for your delectation at the moment. Follow Off the Ball across our social and subscribe to the OTB Podcast Network. After the ads, Michael Moyles and Fiona McHale on Mayo's Senior Women's Connacht Football Championship win against Galway last weekend. During the outbreak, you're going to hear a clip from the latest episode of the Football Pod where Paddy James and Tommy talked about Dublin's All-Ireland chances. The Football Pod is in partnership with AIB, proud sponsors of the Football, Hurling and Camogie All-Ireland Club Championships. Check out the hashtag #TheToughest for more.
You're listening
to OTB AM. Off the Ball Daily.
A home for your favourite podcasts from Off the Ball. You had to be there, the performance rankings, a slight tangent and the crappy quiz.
Have you ever done therapy, Adrian, specifically related to the crappy quiz though? I'm not interested in the rest of your life, obviously.
I would consider it, but I haven't.
That's private territory.
Subscribe to the Off the Ball Daily podcast feed right now.
Look at Dublin, Paddy. They're going to get, if they get through that group, which they will, like another Division 2. It's another Division 2. They're going to get either if Kerry beat Mayo, they'll get a Mayo or a Tyrone or a Galway. And even if it is one of those teams, like that's a very tough quarterfinal there. Very tough quarterfinal. So they're going to have a very tough quarterfinal, very tough semi-final to get to a final. And they're going to be caught there. They're going to be completely undercooked.
James, I feel like everyone else from Kerry working in the media hears James O'Donoghue and thinks, why is he not on brief? Why is he not on message? Like, you are so refreshingly consistent in your doubts around Dublin. I love it.
I told you, everyone in Kerry is a closet Dublin fan. They're afraid to say anything out the way.
Didn't think that was the case last Thursday night. No.
Paddy, you were loved. You were loved, Paddy. I just saw Mark O'Shea casting eyes towards you a few times, saying, "James, would you shut up? Would you?" So listen, you're going to get real legit analysis on the pod.
The threats are coming from other directions. They're coming from Galway. I think Galway are.
And don't forget the North.
Realistically, the ones to beat. Then you have Derry and Tyrone are going to be very dangerous. Armagh. All these teams are coming.
Yeah, 100%.
I think to wrap up on the Leinster final this Sunday. I'm interested to see Louth's approach from the get-go. Can they get Sam Mulroy and Downey and these guys who are sharp shooters? Can they cause trouble for that Dublin defence? And how do Dublin deal with Louth's defensive setup? Because I agree with parts of what James is saying. Not all of it, definitely not. But with parts of it, I think you want to see some sort of credentials from Dublin as All-Ireland contenders this Sunday. Some sort of statement. Because we've seen it against Laois.
Great.
And then we see nearly the exact opposite against Kildare 2 weeks later. What are we going to see this Sunday? Because you don't like any of the top teams, and they're talking about winning the All-Ireland. You don't want loads of inconsistency. That can come back to bite you. You want to start seeing the real deal.
OTB AM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.
So the Mayo footballers ended a long wait, 7 years for a Connacht title victory when they beat Galway at the weekend. I'm delighted to say manager Michael Moyles and Fiona McHale, one of their players, is with us this morning. Fiona, how were the celebrations after that?
Yeah, they were good. They didn't last too long. Everyone was back to work on either Monday or Tuesday. A few people had exams as well, but we made the most of it on Sunday night anyway. You have to, after a 7-year wait for a Connacht title, you have to make the most of it.
Scratching a 7-year itch is one of those great things in any sport. At what point during this season did you start to feel confident that, because obviously you've been thereabouts, and some years you've been disappointed, some years you've done really well in the meantime. So was there a point that you can look back on now and go, actually, this feels a little bit different this year. This feels like we're capable of doing it and we have justified belief in ourselves?
Yeah, well, I suppose we're with Michael now and the management team. This is our 3rd year, so we have been building. And I suppose even the first 2 years we were with Michael, you always had that belief, but you have to be realistic as well about where you're at and trying to build a squad and all of that. So I think this year with the league, even though we came out probably the wrong side of a majority of our games, what was really pleasing about the group was that for every training session on the Wednesday after those losses, we may have lost by a point or 2 points, it was all very close, the group just stayed positive. Everyone just kept their heads up, just kept focused on the next game. And I think that probably has been the most important thing this year. And things just really came together probably a couple of weeks before we went into the Connacht final. You were wondering when things were going to start to click, because you know you could be working on things at training and wondering, is this going well, is this going right? And you really, you do need a win as well at the end of the day to have that buy-in to what you're trying to do and all the things that you're working on. So probably just the way the group stuck together through those league games. And we came out the right side, obviously, of our relegation battle against Donegal, and that was obviously so important for confidence and morale within the group as well.
Yeah, that game that Fiona mentions, Michael, I mean, that Donegal match was back in March. That's the last competitive game you had. Is that a tough test for a manager and the coaching team as well, to come in after such a cold period of no action? All of a sudden you're in the Connacht final.
I know, because I think there's plenty of teams around there that are looking for good high-level challenges, and we had a few of those. And again, it gives us a time to maybe take a break after the league. I know Galway didn't have that same opportunity, so we took a week and we kind of reset the girls. Some of the girls were gone on an all-star trip, so it gave us a chance to reset. There was a lot of things in the league that went very, very well for us, but results-wise didn't. We just came out on the wrong side of it, and losing by a point or losing by 10 points is still losing. So, we knew, as Fiona alluded to, that we were close and things were coming good. I suppose for us was getting the group together. I think the first year and the second year there was a big turnover of players, and like there's a lot going on in ladies football, as you know, so it's trying to keep a group together, and then once you do that, it's kind of striving for success. And we feel that we've a lot of consistency between last year and this year, and we got an opportunity to work on things maybe we did in the previous year. So we were happy enough where we were at the end of the league, and as Fiona said, just getting over that Donegal game, we got 2 wins in the league. But it was just the survival in Division 1 that we were looking for, and to take the opportunity of the league to try out a few things and to make ourselves a bit better in a lot of areas where we needed it.
Is one of those challenges holding on to players? I know Rachel Cairns, 2-time All-Star, had come back in for the league campaign from Geelong, and I guess when you see the likes of Vicky Wall and other top players down under, it is tough to hold on to the top players. You can understand why they'd want to go, but at the same time, for the benefit and promotion of the game over here, we want to see them stay.
Yeah, but look, we can only do what's in front of us. We have a panel of 30 players, and Rachel is one of the girls that's in Australia. That she was with us last year, sustained an injury and had to go back to Australia without playing again for us. Was deeply disappointed. Rachel loves Mayo football, as all the girls do, but she put herself forward too, and she's been with us from the start of the year, and I think that's important. It's a tough gig for the Australian girls. It's a different ball game. And when they come back, it takes a bit of time to get back into Gaelic football. But we fully back all the Mayo players are in Australia. But for us, we need to concentrate on what's here. I suppose the commentary around, for my first 2 years anyway, was about the people that were missing. And that's, I suppose, one of our remits is to make sure they're talking about the players that are here.
Fiona, we were chatting to James Tracy, the former Leinster player, on the show. He was in the studio earlier. And he was talking about the word hatred when it came to the relationship between Leinster and Munster. You've had this rivalry with Galway now in Connacht, and of course they were chasing, I think it was 5 in a row this year, so they've had a little bit of dominance in Connacht. But is there a bit of spiciness in that fixture, a good spiciness, one that kind of gets everyone up for the match, I suppose?
Yeah, there always is, and it's been really very much ourselves in Galway over the last probably decade, because every so often you might have Sligo, Roscommon or Leitrim who might come up to senior level, but that fixture is there and it's been consistent every single year, and really Galway have gotten the right side of it more often than not. But yeah, they're the same as us. That rival is strong, but it's a respectful rival at the same time. But yeah, we do enjoy playing each other. So and I'm sure there's a chance we could end up playing each other again, no doubt, at some other stage in the season this year too. So
when you look at the game of the weekend, 7-point victory, so it looks reasonably comfortable on paper, but that second half performance in particular, I think you outscored Galway by 2-6 to 1-1 in the second half. So that must be quite pleasing, Fiona, as well, to be able to push on in the second half when things get a little bit tight and testy.
Yeah, and there's been certain games this year where we've probably had shaky starts, and we had a really good start. That was probably one of the factors in winning the game for us, was we got 1-3 on the scoreboard. And what was also pleasing for us was that Galway came back at us and they went ahead at half time, and there was no panic within the group. You could just really sense that calmness that, okay, Galway've got a point ahead, but we know what our plan is, we know what we have to do. And the second half, then, you always need a bit of the rub of the green too, to get over the line. But I think just the squad that we have, and the fact that, you know, 2 of our subs, Sean Howley and Sinead Walsh, came on, and in that final quarter, I think between the two of them, they got 1-3 and probably contributed to the penalty too. So between the two of them, 2-3 of that 2-6. So it just showed the importance of the depth in our squad as well. So I just really think having that depth, but also just the girls being calm around Galway come back at us, because it was we went up, then they went up, then we went up, and then they got that goal in the second half as well. It was a real turning point, but the decisive thing for us really was the penalty, and Rachel slotted that really well, and that really just set us up then nicely for the last 10 minutes.
Michael, can we zoom out a little bit to the general championship? Over the last couple of years, obviously being involved with Mayo, you got to start local and try and win Connacht, but haven't seen just how quickly a team can come together and actually go and win the ultimate prize. Has that been an inspiration? Has it been a bit annoying that Meath were able to kind of come from nowhere and do that so quickly? How do you feel about the level of competitiveness that's there and the opportunity that represents for you guys?
I don't think Meath came from no place. I think there was a lot of work at underage, and they had underage success with a lot of those players, but like good structures, and they had a lot of momentum coming in, I suppose, winning an intermediate and winning Division 2, and that's great. It's great for the game. You can see Kerry going from stride to stride, and it shows the work that's going on within those counties. For us, I suppose it's an inspiration, because it shows how much preparation and momentum can carry you forward, and that's, I suppose, one of our goals this year was definitely the Connacht title, because in a 2-horse race, it should never be a one-sided affair. It should never be a monopoly. So, look, that's going to help us. We feel that will help us, and that's why we put major emphasis, maybe more so than Galway, on the Connacht title. So we feel that momentum can bring us forward into the All-Ireland series. But I think teams are very levelled off now at the moment. I know Kerry probably at the moment are a step above everybody else who seem to be, but I think that will level off again, and it will come down to on the day with an awful lot of these games. And that's exciting for the LGFA, and it's exciting for the championship that you have so many teams that have the potential to win the All-Ireland.
That helps, doesn't it, when a team like Meath comes along, I'd imagine, Michael, that it gives everyone not a lift, because you don't want to see any other county winning by your own, but when you see a team come, as you say, it's not from nowhere, it was built up over a number of years, but a new face lifting the trophy, it kind of gives everyone a little bit of motivation.
Yeah, well, the dominance was there between Cork and Dublin were sharing it over them. You know, Cork for 10 odd years were winning it, and then Dublin came and had their monopoly for a while. But, you know, somebody new to come in and come in, as you said, virtually kind of from no place and win it, and then put back to back, and they're not gone away. You know, I know they've tried a lot of new players during the league. Then you have Cork, who are an excellent team. You know, you can see that at the weekend. Dublin are still there. So look, there's a lot of teams that have the potential and would feel that they have the capabilities to win this championship and would be going into it full-heartedly. So it's exciting. It's good to see, and it's great for the LGFA to have that competition.
You'd have cut your teeth, Michael, with I think at club level you would have, if I'm not mistaken, played with the likes of Stephen Rochford and Kieran McDonald, who've both gone into coaching themselves, and you'd have played under Martin McHugh and John Mahon at county level as well. Have you picked up little bits and bobs over the years from different coaches, or are you very much your own coach, or is it a case of taking everything on board from what you've experienced in your own career?
No, absolutely. Always taking something on from everybody. As you say, Martin McHugh was with us in IT Sligo, and it was the time that back in the day when you'd had the quarter-final, semi-final and final 3 days in a row. So our training sessions were 7 o'clock in the evening, 7 o'clock in the morning, 7 o'clock in the evening, 7 o'clock in the morning. So he was thorough. And again, you've got John Mahan, Pat Holmes, always got great coaches when I was playing. But even now, our coaching staff that we have in with the ladies, and the thoroughly deserve that level of preparation, are very good, and there's constant communication. So we're always learning, and the men are very good to us as well. We can pick their brains just on little bits and pieces. The ladies is a game apart, and a lot of us came from the men's game, so maybe took a while to just find out little bits and pieces of advantages there. I think the kick-out's very important, and we've Micheál Slingerman in there, League of Ireland goalkeeper, played for Mayo, and he's excellent. So those little bits and pieces we're always picking up, and we learn lessons in all our games. We played Meath last year in the league semi-final, we played Dublin on a number of occasions, and you're always picking up bits and pieces, but it's just bringing them in and making them your own is important. And we're coming around to that kind of area now, where our development is at the stage where we're happy. We probably weren't happy with a lot of aspects of the Galway game. We went 1-3 up and made a few mistakes and let them back into the game. And in the second half, even that goal was very, very preventable. I know they only scored 1-1, but it's bits and pieces like that we have to clean up if we're going to be on all Ireland contenders, or if we want to step up to another level. We have to start cleaning more of those mistakes up.
I know it's hard to quantify it, Fiona, but from a player's perspective, as Michael mentions, the kickouts, little things like that, like working with Michal Schlingerman in training, and I know Galway would have squeezed your kickouts for large portions of that game at the weekend, and you had a press, I think, on Galway's kickouts for a large portion of theirs. So how important is it when you're in the heat of battle, that you're thinking back to little moments in training and little pointers and coping with things and that you've already prepared for, I guess?
Yeah, exactly. And there'll be a lot of the times of teams where you might work on kickouts, the training session before a game, or you might be working on a particular kickout, and it's not enough to just spend maybe 2 training sessions on something. And this is something that we've really focused on this year, that it's something that you can really go after and get a lot of impact from, especially even on the defensive kickout side of things too. Like, we've been on the wrong end of maybe high press for Meath last year. As Michael said, we've learned a lot from playing some of these big teams, but you have to be working on it continuously across the year. And we have particular focuses on certain aspects of the game, and then in a few weeks later you might revisit it, realizing that you need to spend more time on it. So, but as Michael alluded to there, having Michal Schlingerman in there has been amazing for us, because like, I've learned so much from him. He's an outstanding coach. Just even the way he works with everyone, how he deals with the players, and just all the little tiny things that you wouldn't even think of. So he's been invaluable within the squad this year.
Fiona had mentioned there the strength and depth, Michael, a couple of minutes ago, and I think I'm right in saying in that Donegal do or die relegation decider, you made 17 substitutions in total across the hour, which kind of pinpoints just how much talent there is in that squad. Can it be difficult having so much talent? I know it's a good problem to have, but from your perspective, you have a lot of decisions to make.
Yeah, and it can be frustrating for the girls, I suppose, because the league turned out the way it was, and we were in a lot of tight games, and we didn't get to give as many game time as we would have wanted. So that's what we were kind of alluded at the very start, that we wanted to get a squad together, a good, strong squad, girls that wanted to play for Mayo, keep them together, and then start to strive for success. And I think we have that now. It can be frustrating for girls. Like, we have some serious talent that didn't come off the bench on Sunday, and they will have an opportunity again. But we need that, because even if we look at last year, we played Cavan in a championship game last year, and Saoirse Lally and Eilish run into each other. One had a broken collarbone, the other one dislocated her elbow. 2 girls were out straight away 10 minutes into a championship game, and Saoirse Lally didn't play again for the rest of the year for us. Roisin Flynn came in and had a superb championship after that. It can be difficult to make decisions, and there's very little between players, but it gives us the opportunity, depending on who we're playing or the style that we're playing against or what we need, that we can kind of be a bit more diverse. Because the last 2 years we got to All-Ireland semi-finals, and there's been a weak turnaround. We beat Galway 2 years ago in a quarter-final, and we played Dublin, and Dublin blew us out of the water in the first 10 minutes. Now, we were competitive after that, but the game was over. Again, we beat Cork last year, played Kerry, 2 different styles, and we didn't adapt. Within the week we weren't able to turn around what we needed to do. So now we have that in our panel where we can choose different girls for different games, and that's a brilliant weapon to have.
How has your game adapted and changed over the years, Fiona? Because that kind of half-back role has certainly moved on, and even look in your own county, the likes of Lee Keegan and Keith Higgins over the years, Paddy Durkin, in the men's side of things. It's a position that's constantly evolving and changing, but I'm sure you've had to move along with it.
Same conversation as those 3 guys from a half-back perspective, but the game has completely changed. It's evolving all the time, but you see that in the men's game as well. And I know there's frustrations around the men's game at the moment with, it's really boring, it's very predictable, but that's just the way it is. Next year there'll be other tactics and the game will evolve again. But it's probably gotten more physical, and that's been a big talking point this year around the physicality and what you're allowed to do or not allowed to do. And refs are really clamping down on the tackle, and the charge rule is probably something that was a real talking point too. And I think, in fairness to the referees, that was a big talking point across the league, but it's like as if they've reevaluated and they have listened to maybe what's been said from from players and managers in the media. That's what it appears to be, because it hasn't been as much of a talking point over probably towards the latter end of the league and even in the championship so far. I won't speak too soon, but it is a frustrating rule, and it's just frustrating how it has been interpreted. But I think referees are changing their mindset around that. But overall, the physicality has moved on a lot, and I know that they are there has been motions put across around changing the rules or adding that little bit more physicality, and where do you draw the line? So watch this space. Things could change over the next couple of years, but yeah, it's I'm getting a bit older too as well, so you have to change your style for that as well.
It comes for all of us, unfortunately. Fiona, thanks a million to both of you for joining us this morning, and congratulations on the Connacht final victory. Best of luck with the rest of the season, folks. Cheers.
Thanks very much.
It's Fiona McHale and Michael Moyles there celebrating their victory at the weekend. Now, on tomorrow's show, Shane and Johnny Ward are here with Will O'Callaghan's hurling power rankings. Former Munster prop John Ryan, who of course is going to be a future Munster prop as well, but he's currently propping down in New Zealand. It's an incredible story, and he's got to come back, as another one of those potential future coaches if that's of interest to him. We'll have more on the Kildare Camogie story that broke this week, the return of JD in studio, plus plenty more, including Champions League reaction from the Milan derby. A couple of comments for you. We struggle to get League of Ireland Premier Division games on TV on a Friday night, and now pushed by TDs to get more GAA on free to air because it makes them look good. It's a small space with a lack of stations. So I think, just to clarify, the GAA are absolutely entitled and should have an over-the-top platform to showcase their games. There is a set number of games which the country has decided is worth putting on free to air, and maybe the conversation needs to be opened up about that. I'm not against pay-per-view. Like the Setanta were the first ones to turn those Saturday night games into something good and meaningful. They became Air. Air obviously then sold some of those Saturday night games as their package as they stopped broadcasting to RTE on Saturday nights. And now RTE have come and decided that they want to be the only buyer in the market. And they have the advantage of not having to make commercial revenue because they are funded by the taxpayer. And so that skews the game. And as a result now, they're the only buyer. Is that a good situation for the GAA to find themselves in? Maybe it is, because they can just choose whatever they want as the price. Or maybe it's a good position for RTE to be in, because then they could say, well, who else are you going to sell to? And we're going to get full value. We're going to extract full value for our tax dollars. But instead what they've done is they've got into bed with them, and now they're their mates. And it's like, what's the price? Well, that's the price. Okay, that's fair enough. Well, that's the price we're paying over here. So that's the price. That doesn't really seem like good business to me. Now, maybe somebody's going to come along with a genius explanation for how they've got a really brilliant rights deal here, and maybe RTE is making money this year. That all of a sudden out of nowhere, they've become a really well-run organisation and they're making lots of money. I don't know. Maybe they can afford it.
There's a lot of elements, like what Alan Dillon was saying earlier, that those 15 games that they have choice over. He was talking about that should be scrutinised. I'd love to see the decision-making process. I don't know, can they be transparent with that? I'd love to see how they come to the decision as to which games they picked up behind a paywall.
Yeah, I suspect that GAAGO is not under freedom of information, but it doesn't make any sense for me how you can be the head of the sports department in one organisation and on the board of another organisation who should actually be competing with each other.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely fair. Look, this 5-year deal, as we said earlier, that Declan McBennett was quite happy to review it at the end of this year. I think not happy, that's probably the wrong word to use, but I think it should be reviewed once this championship's over for sure.
He's absolutely, he was pushing that, saying that's not going to happen. Well, sorry, I don't think he was happy to review it.
No, sorry, not happy.
Yes, I will listen to your question and I will say something, and then at the end of this will all go away.
Yeah.
We'll be finished. There was no
but it's not going to go away, so it has to be reviewed.
I think it's only going to ratchet up over the next couple of weeks, but it'll only, I hate politicians getting involved in sport because they're only doing it for their own ends, right? So, but once you accept that, they do legitimately have the ability to ask questions. The Public Accounts Committee can ask questions about whether or not the taxpayer is getting value for money. There's a media committee. They're like, yeah, we could actually ask some questions here. Get your shit together and do it.
Yeah, 100%.
Seems to be all very cosy between GA and RTE, says John O'Brien. No other broadcaster in the running show games. Shame on them when you consider the lives of the older generation over the last few years. Can we also call to light how people in the north have been geo-blocked from watching RTE matches on TV or the RTE player for years, and no solution has ever been found by RTE, says PWGC.
That's a farce, by the way. People in the north not being able to watch a 32 county game. It's a farce. So I don't know what the solution is. That's
Well,
another
I mean,
issue.
it's pretty easy. Just invest in the technology, make the technology work.
100%.
Just make the technology work. Like, I'm sorry, but if you're going to do this, it's going to be cost to it. But the thing is, it actually suits the GAA because then they can charge the BBC for the rights as well. I agree with Alan Dillon. Next thing, they'll be putting water behind a paywall, says Nigel Gallagher. Well, they tried that, Nigel, but it turns out you can't do that, Nigel. Even though, like, water, you know, maybe we should all pay a little bit for some water so that, like, we actually treat it like the resource that it is. I don't know. I mean, I realise it's controversial. Maybe if we valued this shit, we wouldn't be like wasting it the whole time.
It's true.
It's radical here.
That's a bigger problem, killing our planet. Yeah,
lads, Ireland literally has some of the best internet coverage in the world. This poor broadband rubbish is anecdotal, says the Francie Brady.
I don't know if we do. I really don't know if we do. Well, in rural areas, like.
I mean, is there not a combination between phone and is everywhere not? Can you not get something everywhere that you'd actually be able to stream?
I don't know. When I'm in my granny's house, which is in North Monaghan, very close to the border with Tyrone, near Auckland, like to say that you can't get a connection properly is...
Well, is that just on your provider? I'm sure there is another provider who might have a mast.
Maybe.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the house that we used to live in, there was only one provider that worked, so we just moved to that provider and it worked fine.
Yeah. So look around, shop around is what you're saying.
Well, I'm sure there are pockets. There are definitely pockets where you can't get stuff, but most places now you can get something that would be sufficient. I do understand. I still don't understand why they got into bed in the first place for this part of the deal. Like, why do the GA need RTE? It can't be for the technology of their player. Like, nobody thinks the RTE player is good. Do they?
I don't think there's one.
I'd say the RTE player's ma doesn't think the RTE player is any good. To have GAAGO, people need to have Wi-Fi, which isn't cheap either, and broadband can be very up and down, says Shifty Lad. Put the big games on RTE, TG Car and Virgin, and all other games on GAAGO, says Alan O'Neill. The GAA should keep games free to watch on TV for Ireland-based viewers and keep all games behind a paywall online for viewers abroad at a premium. Yeah, we forced people to leave because they couldn't afford to live here, and now we're screwing them for doing it. That sounds like a good plan, Muller Bay.
It's going to ratchet up, as you say, when the football championship kicks off now and you have those massive games in a couple of weeks behind the paywall, then you've pissed off Gaelic football fans as well as Ireland fans.
Equal opportunity pisser offer, I believe, is the... Shane says, how would the GA fans feel about one live game every 2 or 3 weeks instead? Because that's how many League of Ireland games are shown on RTE. Loads more comments coming in. You can get involved on the YouTube comments. Some of the coverage over the last few days is actually dividing hurling and football. Is this the beginning of a split? Asks Danny McOne. Oh, I don't know. Maybe a split is exactly what they need. Maybe we need individual, like Sarah Dulliman's idea for a hurling president. Like the director of hurling job was there and doesn't seem to be there at the moment. It was like, this is working or not working. I don't know. We should do a bit of digging on that. And Michael says, I'm shilling for Ireland, not for the GAA, because he was giving out about Alan Dillon advocating Sky over GAAGO. I don't think he was actually advocating Sky over GAAGO. He's questioning the transparency of the decision-making process. Like, how RTE are in the business of trying to get the most stuff available for the most people on one side, but they're also involved in this commercial organisation whose job it is to exploit the GAA rights that they have. Like, and that's the whole point of that organisation, and that's totally within their remit. That's what they're supposed to be doing. But how do you wear these two hats? You can't. It's a clear conflict of interest. Stephanie Roach, now Stephanie Zambra, has been chatting with our own Kathleen McNamee as we begin the build-up to the World Cup. Have a wonderful Wednesday.
Delighted to be joined by Republic of Ireland footballer and ambassador Stephanie Roach, who is unveiling a unique collaboration between Carlsberg 00, the FAI and the Square Ball in Dublin. The gig, Ireland's first women's sports bar to celebrate the girls in green. The women's national team became the first ever side to qualify for the FIFA Women's World Cup last year. However, 67% of people believe that there would be more hype if it were the men who qualified for a World Cup, revealed research from iReach Insights, commissioned by Carlsberg 00. Could we be doing better? Probably, or most likely, I would say. For more details, keep an eye on the Square Ball website and Carlsberg Social. So, Stephanie, it's great to have you here. I know it's possibly been a bit of a strange couple of weeks for you. You've been out with injury, but how have you enjoyed watching the Shamrock Rovers team do quite well for their first season in the league?
Yeah, it started quite well. I think it's good because we got a lot of positive results without really kind of hitting our full flow yet, you know. So it's been obviously unfortunate being out with the injury. I got injured in our second game against Treaty, so hoping to get myself back as fit as possible. I hit the 8-week mark on Saturday and did a lot of rehab work with Rovers. They're looking after me really well, which is good. They obviously have a lot of, I suppose, kind of experience in the injury too. The injury is a hamstring injury, a tear on my kind of tendons on the T-junction, which Neil Farrugia, I think, had an issue with it as well. So they've learned all the things to do. So hopefully that'll help me get back a little bit quicker.
It sounds like you're in the right spot anyways, if you are going to have that injury. Are you at the stage where, you know, you're back on the pitch in training sessions and stuff, or are you still kind of rehabbing to yourself?
Yeah, so it's an interesting one because I've been able to actually do quite a lot of kind of running and stuff on it. I've been able to kind of do a lot of kind of 70% type of stuff. I've yet to kind of get back to my full stride in terms of a sprint. But I joined back in training on Friday just in terms of kind of doing the pass and drill, the warm up, and kind of being like a floater in the games of possession and stuff like that. So I'm definitely making progress and getting there. I have an ultrasound on Friday just to check on how it's healing and where we're at in terms of being able to get to a more 90% sprint and run. So that's kind of next on the agenda now, is to get myself ready for that. And yeah, hopefully I'll be back on the pitch as soon as possible because definitely missing it. And as I said, the girls are doing really well at the minute, so I want to get back in there and hopefully play my part.
Yeah, so for anyone who hasn't been following along, you guys so far have won 5, drawn 3 games and lost none, which is always the sort of start that you want. And I think probably since a lot of the names that were familiar that were going to Rovers to people, there was an expectation that, you know, the team would be able to perform well in the league, but also not knowing when an outfit hasn't played together ever before how it was going to be. Is this kind of the sort of place that you guys hoped to be at this stage of the season? I mean, you're only a point behind Galway and Peamount, who are in first and second place respectively.
Yeah, definitely. I think obviously there's a lot of moving parts that we need to bring together. I think, as I said already, I think we've done reasonably well considering we haven't really hit full flow yet. You know, I think a lot of different players from different clubs coming in. Obviously, as I said, very talented players, but it's getting that group to work together and play the style of play that Rovers want to play. But I think we've done really well so far. As I said, I think the promising thing is that we're picking up good results without really playing to our best potential just yet. You know, as I said, it's going to take time for it to click and different players to get used to playing with each other. And as I said, the way Rovers want to play is very high intensity and we want to keep the ball and play a good style of football. So we're getting there. Obviously, there's been a couple of results where we don't want to be drawing games. We want to be going in and winning, you know. So then hopefully the wins will come as the season goes on. But definitely it's been a promising start and still a lot to come.
Well, you talk about drawing games. One of the big ones was that matchup against Peamount, and I host the COIGIG podcast with Kieran Donaghy, and she was particularly upset after that. I know she had her own woes on the pitch that day. What was it like for you, I suppose, watching that game? 'Cause you do have your history with Peamount as well, and there's a good rivalry, I think, being built between the two sides, even if this is just Shamrock Rovers' first year in the league.
Yeah, look, I think obviously I know Karen really well, and it was a strange one, which was stepping up to take the penalty because obviously being our teammate for so many years, you never want to see her missing a penalty, but with it being against us, you're hoping that Amanda will save it, and thankfully she did. But yeah, no, look, Karen's a solid player and been unbelievable for Peamount over the years, so it was disappointing for her, but obviously I think the way the game panned out, I don't think we performed to the highest level we know we can, and we were poor at times. But I think every player knows, as I said, there's still a lot more to come from the team, and to get a draw away to Peamount, who are a very good team, was a decent result. But definitely new rivalries being built in the league. Obviously, as you said, a few players have come from different clubs to go to Rovers, so a lot of clubs probably aren't happy with Rovers as a club. You know, they're losing some of their players to them, so that's natural. It's football. It's how it works. I think we as players expect that a little bit. But at the same time, Rovers is who we're with now, and that's the club that we have to represent and do well for. So it's about just trying to pick up the best results as we go. And obviously we play Peamount in Tallaght Stadium in a couple of months now. So next month, about 1 to 3 in now, Jesus. So have that return fixture coming up too. So it'll be a great game again, I hope.
Yeah, I did enjoy chatting to Emma Byrne about the players that were moving about. And I think it was probably because so many players didn't move at once before in the league, because people tended to stick around either where they lived or where they were working or whatever it might be. And she was like, sure, that's just football. That's exactly what's supposed to happen. This is what we want for the league. We want like clubs to be competitive with each other and kind of pulling the best players all around the place, because that means that, you know, there's a capacity to do that. And that's what comes with professionalism or semi-professionalism. It's at loan for you guys at the weekend, who were very much the surprise package to a lot of people last year. How is the team kind of feeling and shaping up heading into that one?
Yeah, again, another club who I think have come on in leaps and bounds. Obviously, kind of recently new to the league in terms of, obviously the league is 10 years old now, so, or longer, isn't it? Yeah, so they've come in a couple of years. I think last season they really showed that they could challenge. They're a very difficult team to play against. They made the game hard. Very good defensively, and they also have some exciting talent going forward. Obviously, Chloe Singleton coming in from Galway as well, very good attacking player. And they've loads of threats all over the pitch. But again, it's going to be a competitive, hard-fought game. And yeah, we're just preparing the best way we can to get down there and get a result. And yeah, it's going to be another good game. I think, as you said, as Emma said, I think the fact that players are moving around the league, it shows that the league is becoming more professional. I think you can see that in the games. I think the games have been really good. You know, any game I go to watch or I watch on LOI TV have been very, very entertaining. And that's a credit to the league and a credit to the players within the league and the clubs that are putting the work in to make sure there's a level maintained within the league. And hopefully it can keep progressing and get better and better. But yeah, big game against Athlone. And as I said, we're taking each game as it comes. We're doing our best to try and hit the form that we want to hit, because the standards are high at Shamrock Rovers, obviously. So hopefully we can get a win and push on to the next game.
Yeah, it's interesting because there is almost that push and pull where there are clubs in the league who are prepared and able to make that move into professionalism a little bit more, such as Shamrock Rovers. That was like the whole thing that they said when they started off, that they wanted to, you know, have a bar and make that the bar that people had to live up with. Or even you look at Sligo Rovers, not so much on the professionalism side, but when they were first starting up their women's team, they said we wanted to get our underage setups correct first so that we had that pipeline. And I think it seems anyways from, you know, someone who watches the league and follows the league, that a lot of clubs are trying to learn the lessons of maybe what went wrong for some of the League of Ireland men's side of clubs when they were making that transition and avoiding those potholes if possible. Is that something that you feel from inside the league as well?
Yeah, of course. I think it's important for clubs to do it the right way. It has to be sustainable. It has to be, I suppose, you have to have a flow of players coming through. As I said before, we have at Rovers a mix of kind of experienced players who come in from other clubs, but we also have very good underage players who came through the underage setup at Rovers too. So it's important that teams have that. I think it's important that it's not just kind of a senior team. I think it's important to have like a whole club behind it, you know. So I think definitely teams who are doing that, the likes of Sligo, I know Bray are doing that as well in terms of their under 17s and their 19s, and the hope then is to go and have a senior team as well in the future. So look, hopefully more and more teams can get involved. So I think it's important to kind of have that link between the men's teams and the women's teams as well, because that creates an atmosphere, creates fan base. You know, I think we've had good numbers coming to all of our games, and I think that's because we have a team like the men's team in Rovers doing really well. So a lot of their fans are hoping to get behind the women's team as well. So yeah, I definitely think there has to be a foundation to what they want to do going forward, and it has to be sustainable, as I said. So having that, I suppose, come through of players as such from the underage system into the senior team is going to be important for clubs going forward. And look, I just want to see the team or the league progressing. I want to be more professional. I think we've been crying out for kind of a more semi-professional league over a number of years. And obviously, I know you said for some clubs it's easier than others. Everybody needs to help in hand to get there. But hopefully, as I said, the league will keep progressing and clubs can continue to do the good work they're doing to make the league better and better.
Definitely. And like for you, what do those next steps look like? Because I know there was a lot of progress made this year, and there was certain, you know, things put in place to make sure that like clubs were able to give players, semi-professional, professional, amateur, whatever it might be, contracts, and to make sure that the systems were right. For you, what are the next steps over the next however many years? I mean, it's kind of an open-ended question because you could achieve it in 3 years, or it might take 10 years as well, depending on how quickly everyone in the league can get up to speed?
Yeah, I think you can take probably, you can look at other leagues across the world who have tried to do it, ones that have worked and ones that haven't worked. I think financially, there needs to be money put into it. Obviously, where's that going to come from is the question. Obviously, the girls qualifying for the World Cup will be good for the league overall in terms of financial gain, in terms of being able to financially kind of support the teams and give them what they need. I think it just has to be done the right way. Obviously, look, there's more kind of, I suppose, intelligent people around the league that can kind of think of what might work and how it might work. But for me as a player, and I think it's funny you mentioned Emma there, like when players are moving around, she's like, oh, well, that's what happens in professional football. Whereas I think some people's reaction to players moving to Rovers was like, for me, I was looking kind of going like, I don't understand why there's such an uproar about it. Obviously, there's the club losing good players, and obviously players going from Shells to Rovers. Shells obviously have a good history in terms of men's football as well. But I think that's how professional football works, and I think there's got to be a mindset that players have to do what's best for them as players. It's a World Cup year. And do you want to be going to a club, if you're going abroad, do you want to go where you're training 5 nights a week and you have the best facilities to get yourself in the best shape possible? Or do you want to be training with your friends twice a week and having fun? That's kind of what you have to think about. It's about making things more professional. It's about it being about football and about progressing as a footballer. And I think that's kind of, I suppose, the shift in mentality that has to happen within the league here for it to reach the potential that it can reach.
And as you say, it does kind of add to the bite and the spice of games a little bit as well. If someone's looking at, say, you playing against Peamount and you're saying, you watch Karen step up there taking a penalty and you're trying to like change your mind to, okay, not on the same team anymore. All that adds to it and adds to the storylines. And if you're a more casual fan, it entices you in as well. So there are so many benefits that do come with a more fluid league, I suppose is the best way to put it. I want to ask you, you mentioned the national team a couple of times here. This weekend marks the 50th anniversary of the women's national team existing in Ireland, and I had the pleasure of interviewing some of the original team on Friday when they were being honoured. And it was a lovely event, and like full credit to the FAI. They really pulled out all the stops to make those women feel like their contribution was important, which it was. What I want to ask you, because it was funny, I was talking to a lot of them and they were like, gosh, we never imagined we'd be here. We never imagined the girls would be going to a World Cup. It's amazing. And I know even you said before in your career coming, 30, 40 years later, that you never imagined that there would be professionalism or reaching a World Cup. And it shows, I suppose, how far we actually have come in the last 10 years or so as a squad.
Yeah, and I think even as you said, it's the shift in mentality, because as you said, women who played that game 50 years ago probably never thought it would come. But even 10 years ago, you were probably looking, going, oh, I don't know how close we are to getting there, I think it's just the professionalism that's come into the women's team over the last number of years. It's been clear to see. I think you can see all of the players are fit, they're strong, they're technically and tactically aware of what's needed to win games. And I think it's just brilliant to see us being able to compete at that level. I remember being at the game in Scotland, and as you mentioned, I keep mentioning Emma now, she was there obviously doing a bit of work for yourselves, and I was there with RTE, and we seen each other after the game, and like it was an emotional thing. It was just like, Jesus Christ, we'd actually qualified for a World Cup, and like both just genuinely happy to see it finally happen, And I think anyone who's ever been involved in football, in the women's game here in Ireland, I think will feel the same way. It's a huge step for the game. It's a huge step for anyone who's ever been involved, who's volunteered and given their time over the years. To finally see us make that breakthrough is really, really special. And I just hope it's the first of many major tournaments. I think it will be. I think the team has made huge strides forward. And for me, I always say this, and I feel like I'm probably repeating myself, but it has to keep progressing. It has to be. It can't just be settled for what we have. We have to keep on moving with the other countries and with our nations and the other leagues that are moving forward. We have to keep doing that as well, because I think from my experience playing abroad in professional leagues, the only difference is it's professionalism, because the players are here. We have some fantastically talented players across the board in the Women's National League, and obviously you've seen in the international setup over the years, but it was just that kind of final hurdle that we were missing. And I think that's finally come with getting to the World Cup. But definitely the talent is here. It's just about pushing it forward and giving every player that extra bit of help to try and make the breakthrough and get to that highest level.
Yeah, it's something that we've been trying to really push home, that as exciting and as, great it will be to actually get to a World Cup, we need to make sure that like the FAI and the league and the clubs and everyone else here like feels the benefit of that, and that they're pushing on and making sure that I suppose that the young Katie McCabe's or Denise O'Sullivan's or Amber Barrett's or whoever it is across the country, that the pathways are there for them, and this isn't just like a one and done, because we've seen that in the history of Irish sport before, say like the Irish rugby team and stuff, and we don't want that to be the same thing here. And for yourself at the moment, I know you said about moving and it being with an eye to the World Cup. Are you just focusing at the moment at getting back on the pitch and getting over this injury?
Yeah, exactly. Obviously, it's been out for 8 weeks now, trying to push back to get myself fit. I've been involved with the home base sessions kind of all the way through, and now at the moment it's just about getting fit, and I'm constantly asked about the World Cup and my chances and everything else, and it's natural. People always say it to me, and for me it's just about really getting myself right for Rovers, and even before the injury it was about playing well for Rovers, because that's what gets you into Vera's eyes, I suppose, in terms of seeing you performing well. Get myself fit, get back playing for Rovers. A few of the young players are doing quite well as well, so I'm going to have my work cut out getting back into the team too. So I have to make sure that I do that, and then we'll go from there. Hopefully get back involved with the home base squad and the sessions, and just take it game by game and day by day in terms of where I get to. But yeah, I'm really excited to get back on the pitch, really excited about the upcoming World Cup and the Women's National League here as well. So it's a good time for women's football.
I feel like they're like ghosts on my shoulder, but Emma Byrne was at one of the home base training sessions this week, and she was saying on the Quick podcast, she's like, Karen, I don't know how you're keeping up with all these young ones. She was like, they're very good. And Karen was like, I'm still here, aren't I? And she was like, yeah, I don't know.
Experience, you use your head sometimes more than
yeah, exactly. Karen was like, I know when to throw a shoulder, and they don't know that too much just yet. And finally, I saw that you were one of the lucky few who made it into Dublin Castle for the visit of Joe Biden when he was here. How was that experience for you?
Yeah, it was a little bit surreal, to be honest with you, because I got the invitation, and it was obviously single invite only, so I went by myself. And I remember going, kind of not really knowing what to expect. I just presumed there'd be loads of people there, because like, why were you asking me? I got there, and it was like I seen Stephen Kenny was there, and I got chatting to him, and then we were both kind of looking around going, there doesn't seem to be many people here. And then there was like a table setting and stuff, so we went looking at that, and I was like, geez, there's not many here at all. Like, so it was obviously a huge privilege to be asked along to it. As I said, it was quite surreal because we were sitting very close to him. I got to chat to him, I got a selfie with him. I was actually sitting beside one of his right hand men as well, so he was like, he loves a selfie, go up and ask him. And I was kind of like, the typical Irish person, like hovering around.
Yeah.
I don't want to be going wrecking his head, so I went up and then I sat back down. And it was only because Mike was his name, Mike Donaghy, he kind of said to me, go on back up. I went up again and I got the picture, and he was chatting to me a little bit. He said his granddaughter plays state in America, so she has an interest in football too. So it was quite relatable and quite chatty, and as I said, it was just a great honour to be asked along to it.
Yeah, I think I saw there was only something like 160 people there, so you definitely deserved the invite and did well to get in there.
Exactly.
Well, Stephanie, thank you so much for chatting to us. It's been really great, and I hope you get back on the pitch very, very soon.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
BAM with Gillette Labs. Get the ultimate shave or your money back. Neon Night Edition available now.